However, every single one of these people was a great cultivator that had undergone the third heavenly tribulation. Basically, all the powerful cultivators of the Green Province had gathered here. Even though they had purposefully concealed their auras, their presences still surged into the air when they gathered together. The 4 monk kings of the Chan monastery of Devanaga received the guests in the center as hosts, while the 4 great cultivators of the Sword Collection Palace and the Umbraline sect each occupied a corner of the hall, radiating with a cold, chilling aura. If others did not take the initiative to talk to them, they would never talk to anyone either. Unlike the Mist Province, none of the great cultivators from the sects of the Green Province left the 3 great sections. Aside from them, there were the great Grand Masters of the Academy of Confucianism, Taoism, Dharma, and Moism. There were many of them, making them the most numerous. They discussed quietly. I heard that the One Monk King isn't even 100 years old yet. How young? I've heard that she hasn't even reached 50 yet. That's unbelievable. Just how many years has it been since someone like that appeared in the world? She must be a reincarnated celestial too. Oh, right. Didn't a reincarnated celestial appear in the Clear River Prefecture a few years ago? Don't mention it. He's already dead. Hee, there are good and bad among celestials too. Yu Weiyang stood with his arms crossed. His face was pale from anger, and he said nothing. Jean Fugui asked with a smile, "Old Yu, who are you angry at?" Yu Weiyang glanced at the Golden Hawk commander. "You're still as meddlesome as ever." Jean Fugui laughed aloud. He was not angry at all. "I'm just showing concern for an old friend. So how can you call that meddlesome? If you're always so hot-tempered, I'm afraid you won't live past 1,000 years old. If I can't, then I'll go to the Azure realm. If you can't, then you can go to hell." All right. Let's hear it. If worse comes to worst, we'll work together and help you vent your anger. Do you know Li Qingshan? Yu Weiyang thought for a moment. Of course. He used to be my subordinate. Jean Fugui had a very deep impression of Li Qingshan. That kid has already played me twice. Yu Weiyang gritted his teeth. Li Qingshan had stood him up again. When Li Qingshan went to listen to the Zen Dharma conference, Yu Weiyang did not want to wait around Great Buddha Mountain, so he agreed to meet up with him at the Great General's estate after the Zen Dharma conference. He was ready to carry out the bait plan against the soaring Locust King. However, many days had passed since the Zen Dharma conference. Yu Weiyang had waited here and there, but Li Qingshan was nowhere to be seen. He was furious. The school of the military emphasized that military orders must be obeyed. If he's a disciple of the school of the military, I'll definitely kill him. Yu Weiyang ground his teeth. Of course, that was only if he could do it. Actually, Li Qingshan could not be blamed for not taking Great General Yu seriously. Now that little and had a new, more perfect plan. He no longer wanted to be some stupid bait. Originally, he planned on telling Yu Weiyang after drawing the sword in the Sword Collection Palace, but with so many things happening along the way, he completely forgot about it. Jean Fugui laughed aloud when he heard that. He glanced at the unraging monk nearby. Why don't you just teach him a lesson while the unraging monk isn't by his side? Otherwise, I'll teach him a lesson for you. He's a member of my Hawkwolf Guard after all. Yu Weiyang said, You might not be able to teach him a lesson right now. Jean Fugui did not feel like there was anything wrong with teaching a junior a lesson. The unraging monk was not a petty person either. He's undergone the third heavenly tribulation a long time ago. Even the crown prince of Xiqing almost died at his hands when he came all the way from the Dragon Province. What right do you have to teach him a lesson? Yu Weiyang hesitated, but he still failed to hold back his anger. What did you say? Chapter 1062. Jin Fugui doubted his ears. His impression of Li Qingshan remained the same as several decades ago. It was also because of Si Qing that the unraging monk had hurried over from the Chan monastery of Devanaga all the way to save him. That brat is very fierce. It's already good enough that he doesn't teach us old fellows a lesson. How would I dare to teach him a lesson? Wu Yong couldn't help but sigh with emotion. What are the two uncles whispering about? Gu Yenying walked over. You said you're old, and that you should have worn my clothes a long time ago, Jin Fugui said with a smile. Forget it, I hate gold. As Gu Yenying spoke, she looked at Hua Sengzan. She felt that he had changed a lot. He was very different from the little blossom in her memory. Moreover, it was a little strange for him to appear here. Hua Sengzan sensed something and turned around to smile at her. Gu Yenying smiled back, but she felt strange and distant. She thought about it and didn't go over. Maybe it wasn't a bad thing for him. At this moment, Ji Xuanri suddenly made his way towards the master of the Umbraline sect and the Dark Queen. This bold action made the hall suddenly fall silent. All the gazes gathered over. Everyone knew about the hatred between the two sections. Although Ji Xuanri was the crown prince of Qing province, he carried a sword on his back. Xian Ri greets the Dark Queen and the sect master. It's been many years since we last met, but the sect master's bearing is still the same as before. Ji Xuanri continued to smile warmly, as if he was not facing a great enemy of the Sword Collection Palace, but two seniors of his. His Highness, the Crown Prince, seems to be getting better by the day. The sect master of the mysterious dark sect nodded slightly and squeezed out a smile, which made him look even more gloomy. Crown Prince, didn't we just meet not long ago? Didn't you want to kill me? The Dark Queen stroked the cat in her arms. He looked at Ji Xuanri with disgust, and his words caused the atmosphere in the entire hall of great strength to freeze. Chu Lai King was currently conversing with the dauntless monk. When he heard that, he could not help but frown. Ji Xuanri became even more humble. You've misunderstood. Dark Queen. I definitely have no such intentions. I get lost. I feel disgusted just by looking at your face. The Dark Queen simply closed her eyes. It was not just to humiliate Ji Xuanri. The face and the name both made her think of the person she had lost. Ji Xuanri's smile stiffened slightly. He had originally wanted to come over and show off the magnanimity of the future King Chu. However, he never expected the Dark Queen to actually ignore the situation at all. She was not even afraid of offending Chu Lai King. He thought, what a crazy woman. Slut, don't be so shameless. Ming Fei placed her hand on the hilt of her sword and shouted, Xianri, why bother with this slut? Hurry up and come over. The Dark Queen said, they really are mother and son after all. They're both disgusting. Amit Ba. The dauntless monk called out the Buddhist name loudly, his voice shaking up the entire hall. He stepped forward to mediate. This is a tranquil land of Buddhism. Can the two princesses give this old monk some face and temporarily set aside their grievances, live together peacefully for a period of time? Across the entire Green Province and even the entire world, there were not a lot of people who would not give the dauntless monk face, but there just happened to be two of them here, and they were two furious women. Ming Fei did not seem to hear the dauntless monk at all. She sneered. Some sluts have lost their children. Seeing how we're united as mother and son, they'll obviously go mad with jealousy. The dauntless monk was helpless. If they don't give me face, then so be it. You dash. The Dark Queen widened her eyes and paled even more. This was the greatest pain she had ever experienced in her life. She said resentfully, I will definitely kill you. I will kill everyone in the Sword Collection Palace. The dauntless monk and the unraging monk looked at one another with bitter smiles. Originally, they wanted to discuss how to deal with the soaring Locust King after the ceremony. Now, even the ceremony was about to be ruined. They could not help but blame this Crown Prince Xian Ri for not picking the right time. "All of you, shut up!" Chu Lai King flew into a rage. A tremendous presence rushed into the air, and fierce winds whistled through the hall. With the King Chu's wrath, the Green Province shook up. Even great cultivators would be alarmed, but it was still useless. "What? You're still going to protect this slut? She said she wanted to kill me." How laughable! A man who can't even protect his own child actually dares to order around. The Ming Fei and the Dark Queen actually targeted Chu Lai King together. Perhaps this was the only language they had in common. Chu Lai King's chest heaved, clearly angered to the limit, but he was unable to vent his anger. Just when the situation had spiraled out of control, a voice suddenly rang out. "Father, please calm down." However, the voice did not come from Ji Xuanri. Instead, it came from behind the hall. It was a woman's voice, ethereal and captivating. In a daze, everyone caught a whiff of the faint fragrance of sandalwood. They saw a woman walk over from behind the hall. She wore a moon-white kasaya, untainted by even a speck of dust. Her long, dark hair reached the ground, and her beauty was like that of a goddess. Her footsteps were as gentle as if she was levitating through the air. Chu Lai King was slightly taken aback. In that moment, he experienced a profound feeling. That was the connection of fate, the connection of blood and flesh. What did you say? The dauntless monk raised an eyebrow. "Father, did I hear it wrong?" "Fine. My ears seem to be particularly bad today. Jean Fugui communicated to you Wu Yang beside him. I also doubt whether I heard it wrong or not. According to my knowledge, His Majesty the King Chu doesn't have a daughter like that." Don't tell me that." Yu Wuyang seemed to think of something and exclaimed in surprise. The cultivators were surprised as well. They all discussed among themselves. "She's one will. Sure enough, she's very young. But what's with father? Don't tell me he wants to recognize a foster father and mother after hearing about the Dark Queen's pain of losing her son." However, even the person who said that did not believe their own speculations. That was far too sudden. Buddhist disciples had always severed their ties with the secular world, and with her supreme talent, why would she need to seek connections? "Is it coming?" Gu Yenying smiled. "Yenying, what do you know?" Jean Fugui asked. "You'll understand if you keep watching," Gu Yenying said with interest. Chu Lai King stared at Little, and thousands of possibilities also appeared in his head, but they were all eliminated one by one. In the very beginning, only a single name remained, the name that was both the most likely and the most impossible. He still found it rather hard to believe. "You're Xianyu?" "I've been called by that name before. Father still remembers it." Little and looked at Chu Lai King with a smile. overlapping with the figure in her memories. The Dark Queen held her breath the moment Little and walked out. Her eyes were locked onto her as her body trembled gently. A flush appeared on her pale face as she murmured, Little and bowed slightly towards Chu Lai King and arrived before the Dark Queen. She held her hands gently. Mother, I've returned. It was time to take back everything she had lost. Chapter 1063. Xianyue. The Dark Queen's tears had already fallen like rain. She let go of the cat in her arms and hugged Little and firmly. She used all of her strength, afraid that this was just a dream. Meow. Xianyue landed on the ground gently and turned around, crouching beside them. She raised her head and looked at the mother and daughter embracing each other. She felt both happy and disappointed. Sorry, Mother. I've made you wait. Little and gently stroked her back. She also felt warmth in her heart. For a moment, she felt like she was seeing an illusion. Their identities had been reversed, and she was no longer a child. Are you really Princess Xianyue? The dauntless monk asked in disbelief. He felt like his brain was not enough. She used to be. Little N's voice was calm, possessing the power to calm people down, making it difficult for them to doubt her. I don't believe you. You're lying. Ming Fei said loudly. She felt a powerful threat. Ji Xuanri was originally the only successor to the position of King of Chu, yet a powerful competitor had suddenly appeared. This would change many things, perhaps even everything. Bitch, how dare you? The Dark Queen was furious. Mother. Little and patted the Dark Queen's hand and shook her head at her. Afterwards, she said to Ming Fei, Is there something you need, Ming Fei? Xianyue is already dead, Ming Fei said firmly. Oh, how do you know? Little and asked. Everyone knows about this. Ming Fei said. Chu Lai King was slightly doubtful too. He had asked the school of Yin and Yang to perform many divinations, but they all said that Xuanyue's life force was already gone. How did she come back from the dead? Little and said, I did die once, but I was saved by someone. I came back to life again. Who saved you? I will definitely thank him greatly. The King of Chu asked. He's not a person of this world. He's already taken off and left. Little and raised her head slightly. Her gaze seemed to pass through the room and fly towards the distant horizon. Perhaps it was because she had heard him mention it too many times, but she also wanted to take a look beyond the 9 heavens. In the past, she did not care about these thoughts. You're lying, outsider. How is it possible to enter and leave this world freely? Ming Fei said. Wu Yang and Jin Fugui exchanged a glance. Those who were invited to the king-conferring ceremony were all existences who stood at the pinnacle of the 9 prefectures. They understood the power of the laws of heaven and earth the most. The 9 prefectures had long been devoured by the demon region. I don't know either. Little and said frankly, this was indeed illogical, even for existences at the level of demon god, Qiongqi. Descending once required a great deal of effort and would cause a huge commotion. The only explanation was that the brother ox of Green Mountain was a being of a higher level than Qiongqi. This was not something that these people could understand. You've been hiding so much from me. So this is where your true inheritance lies. The dauntless monk came to a realization and let out a long sigh. At first, he was worried that Little and had inherited the legacy of the Golden Cicada Spirit King. However, even the Golden Cicada Spirit King could not have made her go through 3 heavenly tribulations in a row in just a few decades. The ability to control 33 Buddhist treasures at the same time was not something that could exist in this world. Now that she had said so, everything made sense. That person didn't want me to reveal this. Don't tell me the person you're talking about is actually a bodhisattva? The dauntless monk's voice trembled slightly. He instinctively treated the person from beyond the heavens as a person of Buddhism. He felt like only bodhisattvas could freely traverse the various worlds, revive the dead, and grow flesh and bone, nurturing a prodigy of Buddhist cultivation like her. Little and said he did mention the word bodhisattva. However, he was talking about the white bone bodhisattva, and I never saw him reveal the appearance of a bodhisattva. Bodhisattvas redeem people through their myriad incarnations, so it makes sense that they don't want to reveal their true appearance. The dauntless monk was ravishing with joy. He felt a sense of deep veneration towards Little, and who had seen a bodhisattva before. If all of this was real, then she was the chosen one. She was the hope of the Chan monastery of Devanaga. No, of all Buddhism in the world. He was also willing to believe that this was real. Compared to that, a measly position of monk king was nothing. A series of clangs rang out from behind the grand hall. The seven treasures monk king gripped his staff firmly and was unable to hold back his excitement. His golden bracelet trembled. He had come with a decree to confer the title of monk king to Little N, and he planned on persuading Little N again. However, when Little N went out to reunite with her family, she had asked him to wait here. He never thought he would actually hear such a startling secret. Having been defeated by Little N's 33 Buddhist treasures, he basically believed her more than anyone else. He repeated inside, "So that's how it is. So that's how it is. I have to report this to the imperial preceptor. He has to get her to come to the Spirit Kingdom Temple. He has to get her to come to the Spirit Kingdom Temple. Amitabha, the Buddha is merciful." The four guardian deities brought their palms together and chanted the name of Buddha, bowing towards Little, and they were not bowing to her, but to the faintly discernible bodhisattva behind her. Immediately, the grand hall was enveloped in a mysterious, solemn, and religious atmosphere. The cultivators looked at one another. Those who were not Buddhists struggled to understand this feeling. If Little N really was the successor of a bodhisattva, then she was basically like a savior to the Buddhist disciples of this world. The bodhisattva must have enlightened Little, and so that she could illuminate this world. So that's how it is. That's the only explanation for their cultivation speed and their unbelievable power. Though, that probably isn't some bodhisattva. Gu Yening thought. She had seen Li Qingshan's demon form and Little An's skeletal form. She found it very difficult to believe that they were the handiwork of a bodhisattva. Under this atmosphere, Ming Fei was unable to harp on this topic anymore. She questioned, "All right, even if what you said is true, why did you only reveal yourself now? I remember that you were already a disciple of the Chan monastery of Devanaga many years ago. I was harmed by someone. My soul was damaged, and my memories were damaged. In the beginning, I couldn't even speak. Even though there were some fragments of my memories, I couldn't confirm it. Only afterwards did I completely recover my memories. I've made you wait, Mother. Little and apologized. Who harmed you? Was it this woman? The Dark Queen pointed at Ming Fei and asked. Little and gazed deeply at Ming Fei. Her empty eyes actually made Ming Fei feel a sliver of fear. That was not the gaze of looking at a person, but more like gazing at emptiness. Chu Lai King frowned. If Xian Yu really did accuse Ming Fei of being the murderer, then the problem would be severe. Little and shook her head gently. I'm not too sure either. After all, I was still young back then. But that's not important. What's important is that I'm back, isn't it? Yeah, you're right. Although the Dark Queen struggled to quell her resentment, she did not want to pursue the matter right now and ruin the joy of their reunion. No matter who the murderer is, I will make them pay the price. Chu Lai King let out a sigh of relief. Basically, he had acknowledged Little N's identity indirectly. Even without the profound connection of his closest kin, he did not believe there was a need for her to pretend to be his daughter. Thank you, Father. Little N bowed and turned around. She said to the head of the Sword Collection Palace, Palace Master, you can take out the Xieji's horn now, right? Did I lie at all? Chapter 1064. Immediately, everyone's gazes gathered on the master of the Sword Collection Palace. His face sank slightly, and he extended his right hand from behind his back. He held a curved horn. From the moment Little N appeared, the master of the Sword Collection Palace had silently taken out the Xieji's horn. He never expected her to discover it. This was no longer due to her powerful cultivation, but also due to her sharp judgment. He could vaguely sense that this would be an unexpectedly powerful enemy. Most of the great cultivators present knew about the wondrous effects of the Xieji's horn, which further proved the truth of what Little N had said. Their initial sliver of doubt had all been dispelled now. Sure enough, the new generation replaces the old. Now she's a true prodigy. Jin Fugui sighed. Princess Xian Yue, the One-Will Monk King, and the unbelievable successor of the Bodhisattva combined made Ji Xuanri, the crown prince of the Green Province, pale in comparison. He could already foresee that her existence would definitely influence the overall situation of the world. Amitabha, congratulations to Your Majesty the King of Chu, congratulations to the Dark Queen. The family has been reunited, and the pearl has been recovered. The dauntless monk smiled. In the past few years, my daughter has been so cute and taken care of me. I'm extremely grateful. I almost forgot to congratulate the Chan Monastery of Devanaga for gaining another monk king. The fierce king of Chu also smiled delightedly. This had been a knot in his heart as well. Then congratulations to you too. The dauntless monk and Chu Lai King exchanged glances and smiled. The relationship between the Chan Monastery of Devanaga and the King of Chu's estate was basically a win-win situation. This was good for both of them. The cultivators all congratulated Chu Lai King, and the dauntless monk before congratulating Little, and Ming Fei's expression constantly changed. The master of the Sword Collection Palace closed his eyes as if he was thinking about something. Little and said nothing, only nodding with a smile, but no one would find him rude. Everything had developed according to his expectations. She had not let him down after all. From now onwards, her will could represent the Chan Monastery of Devanaga and even influence the entire cultivation community of the Green Province. Whether it was killing the soaring Locust King or assisting the Golden Cicada Spirit King in ascending, she could do it with ease. The only pity was, he was not here. Sister Xian Yu, welcome back. It's great that you're still alive. This way, all the misunderstandings can be resolved. Ji Xuanri walked forward. His face was filled with a warm smile. If someone who didn't know what was going on saw it, did he really think that it was because of sibling love? Little N was about to answer, when his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He turned to look outside the Hall of Great Strength. Ji Xuanri was no longer in his eyes. "Didn't I warn you? Piss off. Don't disgust us." The Dark Queen's voice was filled with delight. "Damn bitch." Ji Xuanri thought. A sliver of anger flashed through his eyes, not just because of what the Dark Queen had said, but because her appearance had disrupted his entire plan. Little and didn't do it to humiliate Ji Xuanri, but he sensed a familiar aura approaching. "He's finally here. So slow. You didn't even see my performance." He seems very angry. What happened?" A beam of light whizzed over from the northern horizon, heading straight for the peak of Great Buddha Mountain. With a boom, it struck outside the Hall of Great Strength like a rock. Li Qingshan stood in the rising dust and bellowed, "Ji Xuanri, get your ass out here." His voice rumbled like thunder, echoing across Great Buddha Mountain. "Who is it?" The cultivators in the Hall of Great Strength were all surprised. Who was Ji Xuanri? He was the crown prince of the Green Province, the future King Chu. Only the Dark Queen was bold enough to humiliate him to his face. Who else was bold enough to tell him to piss off? However, Ji Xuanri began laughing. He communicated with Ming Fei, "Mother, our esteemed elder has arrived." Finally, a portion of the plan was back on track. Ming Fei sneered too. Originally, she thought she would have to do something else to infuriate him, but in the end, he was even more brainless than she imagined. "Li Qingshan, oh Li Qingshan, Great Buddha Mountain is where you die. The people who kill you will be your fellow disciples." Li Qingshan stepped into the Hall of Great Strength. The golden tiles beneath his feet shattered, and his black hair drifted backwards. He raised his thick eyebrows and pursed his lips. He was furious. Even though he did not give off any aura, he possessed his own intimidating bearing. All the cultivators felt a fishy wind blowing against their faces. It was as if a ferocious tiger had barged into the crowd and was looking for prey. When they met his gaze, they felt a sense of wariness. He really is vicious and powerful. I finally believe he can kill, is bold enough to kill the crown prince of Xiqing. Jean Fugui was stunned at first before sighing in amazement at Yu Wuyang. This kid is getting bolder and bolder. I'd like to see how he deals with this today. However, Yu Wuyang was rather worried. Although he had been stood up twice, they were still fellow cultivators. He did not want Han Qiongji to be sad either. Li Qingshan glanced around and saw Hua Sengzan in the corner. Seeing how he was fine, as if he was unharmed, he eased up slightly and strode over. There was a flash before him, and Ji Xuanri blocked his way again. He asked with a smile, "Qingshan, what business do you have with me?" Li Qingshan was no longer swayed by his words. He spat out 2 words, "Piss off." Ji Xuanri shrugged and backed to one side. Ming Fei barked, "How dare you? How dare you offend the crown prince? What do you think your punishment is?" She turned around and said to the dauntless monk, "Dauntless abbot, is this how the Chan monastery of Devanaga teaches their disciples? Qingshan, what's wrong? What happened?" The unraging monk grabbed Li Qingshan's shoulder and asked frantically, "Master, this is a matter between me and the Sword Collection Palace. There's no need for you to interfere." Li Qingshan gently pushed the unraging monk away and took a step forward. He said to the master of the Sword Collection Palace, "Hand him to me, and we'll mind our own business, or else." The master of the Sword Collection Palace interrupted him. "Or else what? Chengzan is a disciple of our Sword Collection Palace. How can we allow you to act so recklessly? Little Hua, don't be afraid. With me here today, I'll slaughter anyone who touches a hair on you." Li Qingshan surged with murderousness. "Li Qingshan, take a good look at this place," the dauntless monk said furiously. Qingshan, this is a peaceful place of Buddhism. No one will be injured here, so you might as well explain everything. Little and walked over and grabbed Li Qingshan's hand, expressing that he was not completely helpless. Li Qingshan made up his mind and considered it slightly. His priority right now was still to ensure Hua Sengzan's safety. Hua Sengzan was willing to take great risks for his friend, so he could not let him be harmed no matter what. However, before he could say anything, Hua Sengzan spoke first. Qingshan, we've been friends for nothing. Do you really have to kill me? Little Hua, what did you say? Li Qingshan was alarmed. The Hua Sengzan before him had become extremely unfamiliar. Forget it. If that's the case, I'll announce your scheme to the world and let them judge you. Not only has this person become a demon king, but he's even colluding with the demon domain in an attempt to topple the Green Province. The soaring Locust King was only able to escape because of his assistance. So please kill him together, fellow cultivators. Chapter 1065. Green smoke curled up into the air, and the lofty Buddha statue stood high above. Its eyes were slightly shut, completely unfazed. The murals depicted arhats and goddesses, as well as the living beings of the 8 tribes, all in different expressions. They were lifelike, overlooking everything in the hall. Please punish him together. The 4 words echoed through the hall like a bolt of lightning, landing in everyone's hearts. They all looked at Li Qingshan. Demon King, releasing the soaring Locust King, colluding with the demon domain. As long as any single one of these accusations were true, it would be enough to kill him right here and now. Li Qingshan stood proudly, unfazed. His heart sank. He was not worried about these slander and accusations. He was worried about Hua Sengzan. Even when his life was threatened, he believed that Hua Sengzan would never say something like that unless his mind was under control. Is this the secret of the sword collection palace? Little and wanted to speak up for him, but he saw Li Qingshan's face sink. He said nothing. He did not want to argue with his friend. Now that the situation had developed to this point, there was nothing he could do about it. He had not spent all these years of arduous cultivation to bicker with others. As a result, Little and let go of his hand and silently retreated to one side. Ji Xuanri smiled. Sister Xianyue, with your current identity and status, you should draw a clear line between you and people like that. Little and smiled at him. She was devastatingly beautiful. Ji Xuanri was stunned. He was speechless. Fellow Hua, you said my disciple colluded with the demon domain and released the soaring Locust King. Do you have any proof? The unraging monk asked. Unraging monk, it's already come to this, yet you still want to protect him? If you don't believe me, then please ask him to release his aura. Let's see whether it's demon chi or not. Hua Sengzan was aggressive. His face was filled with regret and helplessness. He had used his intelligence and wisdom to put Li Qingshan to death. The unraging monk frowned. This was indeed the greatest flaw. Li Qingshan's cultivation was without a doubt that he was a demon king. The various twists and turns in this matter were difficult to explain to others. Once it was exposed, it was inevitable that people would believe him slightly if he colluded with the demon domain, which would be a huge scandal for the monastery. Gu Yening frowned slightly. There was something wrong with Xiao Hua's behavior. Chu Lai King said, Li Qingshan, release your aura. As for whether or not you colluded with the infernal domain, you can use the Xieji's horn to verify it. This king will prove your innocence. There's no need. I'm not innocent, and I don't need any innocence. Li Qingshan refused indifferently. He was already tired of following the plot set up by others. Wasn't it enough to be played to this extent? So what if he could prove he was not colluding with the infernal domain in the end? Would he be able to save Hua Sengzan? Perhaps he had already lost this friend forever. You, Chu Lai King, raised an eyebrow. He never expected him to refuse so straightforwardly. In other words, you admit you're a demon king, colluding with the demon domain, and releasing the soaring locust king? Ming Fei communicated with him at the same time. Kid, how does it feel to be betrayed? You brought this upon yourselves. Originally, all you had to do was refine the soul-switching sword obediently. Li Qingshan did not answer. He remained silent like a rock. Hua Sengzan continued, and I even know a great secret about this person. He has another identity. Li Qingshan raised his hand and pointed directly at Hua Sengzan. Right when everyone thought he would retort angrily and threaten him, he said, seriously, this person is my friend. I want to take him away. Those who stand in my way will die. Hua Sengzan shuddered inside. He met Li Qingshan's eyes, only to see that there was no hatred or blame in his black eyes, only apologetic and concerned. Li Qingshan, you won't be taking anyone away today. Ming Fei glanced backwards. Qingzan, what other identity does he have? Tell us. She was rather curious as well. Just what other secrets did Li Qingshan have yet to expose? The sight of friends killing each other, sure, was touching. Qingshan. Hua Sengzan's voice was hoarse. His expression twisted as he struggled. His handsome face immediately became rather vicious. His body slowly bent, and he knelt on the ground. A sliver of determination flashed through his eyes as he gritted his teeth. A strand of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, dripping onto the golden brick. Everyone was stunned. The dauntless monk was alarmed. Seeing blood in the grand hall was extremely ominous. Qingzan. Li Qingshan's eyes immediately reddened. He wanted to go over, but Ming Fei blocked his way again. Li Qingshan, stop putting on an act. If you want to silence me, you'll have to get through me first. Then she communicated secretly. Humph, you sure can put up with it. Though, looks like I really can't spare him. Li Qingshan, I can give you another chance. If you kneel and admit your guilt right now, I can still spare his life. Otherwise. Li Qingshan took a step forward, and thousands of golden bricks shattered. The grand hall shook. He swung his fist. Qingshan, you mustn't. The unraging monk stopped him loudly. Everyone else was surprised. He's actually bold enough to attack. A hint of a smile flashed through Ming Fei's eyes. Had he finally run out of patience? Right from the beginning, she had never thought about proving that Li Qingshan was colluding with the demon domain. All she needed to do was infuriate him. He had used the methods of a demon king to attack her, the princess, in front of everyone. Just this crime alone was punishable by death. With a clang, the sword left its sheath. The blade trembled and turned into nothingness, but it produced a strange hum. The space there rippled, overlapping with one another. The sword of clear void, one of the 10 famed swords of the Sword Collection Palace. It possessed an extremely wondrous power. It could form a world of its own for defense, while it could split space for offense. In that moment, Ming Fei seemed to leave the grand hall and stand in a different world. She sneered at Li Qingshan's incoming fist and communicated secretly. When I faced that bitch, the Dark Queen, that day, I was only intentionally hiding my strength. Do you really think you can harm me? Ming Fei suddenly discovered that Li Qingshan's eyes had turned red. It was not a bloodshot red, but a clear scarlet red. His long hair fluttered like fire, and his face became extremely unfamiliar. A pair of curved ox horns grew on his head, engraved with the 2 words North Moon. In an instant, a demonic aura soared into the sky, causing everyone's expression to change. Even the majestic golden Buddha statue dimmed. The nightmare tiger's demonic eye. Ming Fei's breathing halted. She became dazed, and she could not help but feel a hint of fear. Strength of the earth. Ming Fei widened her eyes. The incoming fist rapidly expanded, filling her entire field of vision like a mountain. Tremors of the ox demon. Black cracks crisscrossed, and the overlapping space shattered. The sword of clear void materialized before shattering loudly. Fury of the tiger demon. Li Qingshan let out a furious roar, and his fist landed heavily on Ming Fei's face. How could this be? Ming Fei's face was filled with disbelief. Then, her beautiful face shattered, like the clear sky sword. The vibrating power spread through her entire body, turning her into a bloody mist. Thousands of blood droplets swept past everyone's eyes, splashing onto the Buddha murals and dyeing the hall of great strength red. Chapter 1066. Li Qingshan's furious roar shook up the grand hall, echoing through the entire great Buddha mountain. A small, white sword flew out from the thousands of droplets of blood. It was also sent flying by the punch, spinning as it stabbed into the lotus pedestal beneath the Buddha statue. The small sword was semi-transparent, and the figure of a woman who resembled Ming Fei could be vaguely seen. It was Ming Fei's sword infant. Li Qingshan pulled back his fist, but he did not take another glance at it. "Who are you?" Ming Fei was terrified. She recalled Hua Sengzan's unspoken secret. Crack! A black crack appeared on the sword infant. The sword infant trembled a few times, but it was unable to stop the crack from spreading. It enveloped the entire sword before shattering loudly. Dazzling light shot out from every single door and window. A circular wave of air erupted from the top of Great Buddha Mountain, sweeping over 1,000 kilometers away. The light was like the sea as Sword Chi surged. All the great cultivators unleashed their defenses, blocking the terrifying power of the sword infant shattering. Buddhist chants suddenly rang out. The grand hall was enveloped in golden light. The protective formation had already been activated. The shock wave dispersed. The sword shattered. The person died. And the infant shattered. Those who stand in my way shall die. I will keep my word. The bell at the back of the hall continued to ring. The same bells seemed to appear in the heads of all the great cultivators. They were filled with disbelief, basically doubting everything before them to be a dream. A renowned great sword cultivator had been killed by a single punch just like that. Jin Fugue widened his eyes and opened his mouth slightly, completely unaware of what had just happened. Only now did he realize how laughable and dangerous it was for him to say that he wanted to teach Li Qingshan a lesson. Yu Wuyang was stunned as well. Even though he already knew that Li Qingshan was hiding a lot of strength, he never expected him to be such a colossal figure. Suddenly, he recalled what the Azura King had said to him after the battle in the Azura field. For some reason, I just feel like I'll be in danger of being killed too if I were to fight this kid. How strange. The Dark Queen was stunned too. She was filled with resentment towards Ming Fei, but everything had happened far too quickly. Before she could even feel the joy of revenge, she was instead filled with disbelief. Gu Yenying smiled faintly and sighed with emotion. Had the wild youth under the pine tree finally reached this step? Qing province spanned 30,000 miles, and Jianghu was only a corner. This was what she had told him back then. And to him now, Qing province was only a corner. The dauntless monk shut his eyes painfully. Was it another golden cicada spirit king? No, it was a fiendish demon that was even more terrifying than the golden cicada spirit king. Even the current golden cicada spirit king would not dare to brazenly attack and kill Ming Fei in front of so many mighty cultivators in the Hall of Great Strength. I am North Moon, Li Qingshan said proudly. Hua Sengzan would rather bite his tongue off than reveal the secret. Let him announce it to the world. He felt great delight inside. From this moment onwards, there was no need for him to hide carefully anymore. There was no need for him to be secretive anymore. Li Qingshan was the North Moon, and the North Moon was Li Qingshan. If there really was a path to the 9 heavens, then he would use this place as the starting point. North Moon Demon King. These 4 words appeared in the heads of all the great cultivators. As it turned out, the North Moon that the Dragon King of the Sea had been pursuing for thousands of kilometers had been hiding his identity the entire time. As it turned out, he was not dead. The blood that had splattered across the ground was scarlet and dazzling, making them shiver. Many of them were no stronger than Ming Fei. Standing in the Hall of Great Strength was like sharing a room with a vicious tiger as mortals. They experienced this long-awaited feeling of terror once again. It was the threat of death. Qingshan, you no wonder. No wonder. The unraging monk gazed at the scarlet-haired, scarlet-eyed figure. His smile was suddenly filled with bitterness. With this, all of Li Qingshan's illogicality could be explained, but it was the explanation he did not want the most. Master, I hope you don't regret accepting me as your disciple. Whether I'm a demon king or a demon king, I'm still me. Li Qingshan pressed his chest and said, sincerely, what's the point of saying this now? The unraging monk let out a long sigh. Oh, my damned disciple. Even if I'm willing to believe you, what about the others? Perhaps you don't need anyone else to believe you anymore. Li Qingshan. Chu Lai King flew into a rage. He slammed his palm towards Li Qingshan as hard as he could. In that moment, the scenery and the surroundings twisted and collapsed. The great cultivators were only affected by the residual force, but they all felt like they could not stand steadily anymore. Li Qingshan only felt like the world had turned upside down and twisted. The Buddhist murals in the surroundings all became grotesque and bizarre, seeming to be mocking, seeming to be sorrowful, seeming to be mocking. He thought, he really is the Lord of the Green Province after all. The power in his palm strike is definitely no weaker than the Dragon King of the Seas. However, that's all there is to it. His eyes flashed. When he saw through the grotesque and bizarre murals, he struck out with his palm. Bang! The two palms collided, and the distorted world returned to normal. Chu Lai King was shocked and furious. He stared at Li Qingshan in disbelief. The power of his palm strike could even collapse a mountain, yet Li Qingshan did not budge at all. He was like a mountain forged from steel, unshakable. Instead, an unstoppable force appeared, accompanied by a strange power of tremors. Li Qingshan had never lost to anyone when it came to a contest of strength. Even if the Dragon King of the Sea was present, it would be the same. Your Majesty the King of Chu, you are so noisy and your mouth is a mess. I don't know how you endure it, but I can't. Li Qingshan shrugged his shoulders. I'm sorry, little, and I ruined your plan. He then smiled and said to Ji Xuanri, and yours, die. Ji Xuanri roared and pulled out the soul-extinguishing sword. He was about to take revenge for Ming Fei, but just as he took a step forward, a white sword tip pierced through his chest. The 3 protective treasures on his body did not have any effect. He did not even have the slightest warning. He turned his head and said while gritting his teeth, Ji Xian, you... It's okay, as long as you're happy. Little and said. Her sneak attack was even more fatal than Li Qingshan's attack. I'm afraid you'll be unhappy. This guy is your brother, right? Li Qingshan said, He's all right. I've hated him since I was young. I can't wait for him to die. Little and pulled out the Buddha's slaying sword. Ji Xuanri collapsed on the ground. He sensed the aura of death permeate the air. His widened eyes were filled with confusion and terror. What's going on? I've only been struck once. I don't want to die. The samadhi flames of white bone erupted from his wound and swallowed him instantly. In the moment before his death, he suddenly understood what Hua Sengzan had said. Everything might not be as you expect. Xuanri, Chu Lai King, was utterly furious. This was the successor he had placed all of his hopes on. One will. The expressions of the 4 monk kings all changed drastically. The shock inside was even greater than when Li Qingshan killed Ming Fei. This sinister, strange method did not seem like a Buddhist cultivation method, no matter how they looked at it. Instead, it was filled with blasphemy, even more so than demon folk. Chapter 1067. Behind Xiao An's alluring beauty, white bones and skeletons could be vaguely seen. From the moment Li Qingshan transformed into North Moon and killed Ming Fei, there was no room for negotiation anymore. It was impossible for the Chan Monastery of Devanaga to just stand by. So let's face it together. Whether it's fortune or misfortune, I'll bear half of it for you. Father, please leave. Little and drifted over and swung down with her sword. After witnessing the terrifying power of the Buddha's slaying sword, Chu Lai King was afraid of being struck by the blade. All he could do was pull back and retreat. He said in anguish, Xian Yue, I'm your father. Little and said apologetically, Father, there's nothing I can do to repay you for raising me up. However, as long as my path exists, I can only stubbornly persist. Killing your brother and your father is your repayment, your path? Chu Lai King questioned. In the blink of an eye, great joy had turned into great sorrow. Even with Chu Lai King's willpower, he found it rather difficult to endure. Little and closed her eyes. There was nothing she could say. the
possessing a
enraging
human
monk
heart,
closed
and
his
taking
eyes
back
before
everything
suddenly
from the
snapping
past
them open
meant
again.
enduring
With a
various
flash of
restraints,
light, he
and
turned into
even
the
pain.
unraging
But she
guardian
also
king
needed to
and
make a
filled in the
choice.
gap.
Originally,
The four guardian
Li
kings fell into a
Qingshan could
formation
not be
together
bothered to
and
waste his
bellowed out
breath,
at the
but
same
he could
time.
not help
Guardian
but argue
King
for her
demon
right now.
subduing.
So,
what if I
their
killed my
voices
brother?
rumbled
That
like
kid,
thunder.
Ji Xuanri,
The golden
is putting
light
on an act,
condensed
but he's
into
full
a
of
huge
evil
golden
tricks.
mountain.
He's
crushing
even
down on
worse
Li
than his
Qingshan.
mother.
It
Killing him
suddenly
is the
came
right
to a
thing
halt
to
a
do.
meter
Otherwise,
away from his head.
when he becomes
That's
King
not
Chu in the
necessarily
future,
true.
he'll definitely
Li
bring
Qingshan
disaster to the
supported
Green
the Golden
Province.
Mountain with a
As his
single
father,
hand.
the
Your
strength
also
of the earth
responsible.
flowed out endlessly
We've helped
from
you out
beneath his
greatly,
feet.
but the Golden
As
Mountain
for killing
was
your
even
father,
heavier than
don't
regular
you slander
mountains.
us. The four
We
guardian
haven't killed you
kings
yet.
work together,
So, of
and
course,
press
we
down
don't
inch
plan on
by
killing you
inch.
either.
With a thought,
Am I right,
Li
little?
Qingshan
And
used the
little
gravity of
and
the
had
earth.
no idea
The
whether
Golden
to laugh
Mountain
or cry.
immediately became
That was
weightless,
not without reason.
and the four
But
guardian
since when
kings
did someone
lost
kill
their footing.
someone else's
Go.
wife and
Li
child
Qingshan
and claimed
raised
that
his
they were
hands
helping them
and pushed
that
as hard as
last
he could,
sentence was
sending
as
the Golden
mocking
Mountain
as it
flying
could
towards
get.
the majestic
Chu
Buddha
Lai
statue
King
in the hall.
basically lost
The
his
Buddha
mind from
statue
anger.
suddenly opened
His
its
hatred
eyes
surged
and stared.
Everything
at Li
had to be
Qingshan.
attributed to
It
this
extended
wretched
its
demon.
hand and
I
grabbed
don't
the
care
Golden
if you're
Mountain,
Li Qingshan
the mountain
or
that
North
was
Moon,
as heavy
human
as a
or
mountain.
demon.
Seemed
Don't
to
even
be
think about
weightless
leaving
in the
great
Buddha's
Buddha
hand.
mountain alive
The
today.
Buddha stood up
Everyone,
slowly,
what are you
becoming
waiting
even
for?
taller than the four
Chu
guardian
Lai King
kings.
gave an order.
It had
and his
gathered
words were
millions
the
of
law.
worshippers,
Li
and the
Qingshan,
condensed power
I
of
originally
belief
thought
over
you had
10,000
Buddhist
years.
nature
The Buddha
and
strode
wisdom,
towards Li
which is why
Qingshan
I
with
allowed you
heavy
to
footsteps.
cultivate in the monastery.
At the same time,
You've actually
the
made a
Arhats,
terrible mistake.
maidens, and
Not
protector
only did you
Jialan
conceal
on the
your
murals
identity
in the
as
surroundings
a
of all
demon, but
appeared.
you've even committed
Many
a
of
massacre
them
in the
gave
temple.
off
But
the aura
you,
of the third
but you also
heavenly
for Taoism,
tribulation.
you
Li Qingshan
vaguely
Li
recalled
Yushan,
that
and
this was also the
dauntless
handiwork
monk
of the
swung his
five
hand and
absolutes,
powered the protective
immortal.
formation. In
Enveloping
that moment,
the grand hall seemed to become a
and
Buddhist
sealing off
kingdom
all
on
the
earth,
doors,
turning
rippling
it into a golden
boundless
cage.
golden
He
light.
glanced at Xiao
In order to clean
and
up their
sighed
sect,
again.
The
dauntless
Chan
monk's
monastery of
hopes for her
Devanaga
had
were
already
so
done
great
that
they
they
even
even
surpassed the
Jin
unraging monk's
Fugui
hopes for
and
Li
Yu
Qingshan.
Yang exchanged
But in the
glances,
end, it was
and
all
drew
for
their
naught,
arcane treasures
which left him
and
extremely
weapons.
disappointed.
They were
Cut
also
the bullshit.
honored guests
Right
of the King
and
Chu's
wrong
estate.
will naturally
No matter
be
how
clear.
they viewed
Li
Li
Qingshan
Qingshan waved his hand.
they could only
and the
treat
wildflower
him as an
blade
enemy right
appeared
now.
in his hand.
The other great
Sensing his
cultivators
raging
of the
battle
academy
intent,
the
all
wildflower
stepped forward
blade spirit
and unleashed
roared
their
out
supreme
excitedly.
techniques.
Kid,
A great
are you finally
grandmaster
going to
of
start a
Moism
massacre?
unleashed a few
Do you
puppet
think there's
kings,
still a future
while
for
the
you?
great
Fearless
grandmasters
guardian
of the famed
king,
school,
the dauntless
prepared
monk
the
bellowed
mantra
out
of many words
furiously.
Wretched
His
demon,
Buddhist
today
light
is the
shone
day you
brightly,
die,
turning
when you
into
killed
a
the
fearless
disciples
guardian
of my
king.
school of Confucianism.
At the same time,
Did you think
two
this
other
day
guardian
would come?
kings rose up from the
An
ground,
old man
falling
with a
into the
long
guardian
beard
king
barked.
demon.
He wore a
subduing
set of yellow
formation,
scholarly robes,
but they left
clearly
behind a
huge
great
gap. Grandmaster of
unraging.
Confucianism. The three
Haha,
guardian
you
kings
need to be careful.
looked at the unraging
We don't know each other
monk
well.
together. When we fight later, I won't show any mercy. I'll probably end up killing another disciple of Confucianism. Li Qingshan smiled. You're already at death's door, yet you're still so stubborn. Even in the chaotic Mist Province, the king of Southern, you could command a group of demonic cultivators, let alone the strict order of the Green Province here. It had reigned for an even longer period of time than the Great Xia Empire, which allowed the King Chu's estate to possess supreme authority. With a single order from the Chu Lai King, all cultivators had to obey. However, this was all within the Chan monastery of Devanaga. Otherwise, everyone would have to consider just how great of a price they were willing to pay. What a grand spectacle, Li Qingshan said. This spectacle really did live up to the name of the blooming blade at the end of the road. It seemed a little like he was at the end of the road, but before he saved Hua Sengzan, he would never back down. However, the master of the Sword Collection Palace remained in a corner of the hall the entire time, guarding beside Hua Sengzan. Even when Ming Fei and Ji Xuanri were killed, he did not move at all, giving Li Qingshan no opportunity at all. Aren't you going to avenge those two bastards? Li Qingshan asked. You're dead for sure, so why do you need me? You're looking for an opportunity to save this traitor, aren't you? The master of the Sword Collection Palace was filled with hatred
If it were not for Hua Sengzan's warning, and he allowed Li Qingshan to refine the soul-switching sword, the situation would not have developed like this. The Sword Collection Palace would not have lost two great sword cultivators for some reason, causing his entire plan to fail. If you touch a single hair on him, I'll make your entire family die, Li Qingshan said. Chapter 1068. He swung the sword with heavenly reliance, revealing his abilities. There were no complicated moves, only determination to cut through everything. At this moment of life and death, Hua Sengzan's eyes recovered their clarity. His mind was unprecedentedly clear. The light from the sword filled his vision, but the figure in white remained in his mind. He smiled. He still could not forget her, after all. You're looking to die. Li Qingshan's eyes almost popped out of his head. He spread his fingers and reached out, using the gravity of the earth. Hua Sengzan immediately rose into the air, flying towards Li Qingshan. However, he was not as fast as Heavenly Reliance. Just when he was about to be cleaved in half, he extended a jade folding fan and blocked Heavenly Reliance. The atmospheric winds and the light clashed violently, kicking up violent gusts of wind that rumbled through the hall. Gu Yenying arrived with the wind, arriving first despite having set out later. Her white clothes drifted about. Commander Gu. Hua Sengzan widened his eyes and stared at her deeply. Gu Yenying, do you want to help this wretched demon as well? Don't forget who you are. The palace master glared at Gu Yenying, and his gaze condensed into an invisible sword intent. This person has publicly exposed the wretched demon's evil deeds. You should be rewarding him. Why must you kill him? Gu Yenying's eyes turned into a hawk's eyes, as if they could see through everything. She nullified the invisible sword intent, which made her seem even more valiant. He's a member of my sword collection palace now. I have my own ways of dealing with him. Do you really think you can stop me? The palace master slapped the hilt of his sword, and Heavenly Reliance turned into a streak of light as it shot off. Sword manipulation had always been the foundation of cultivators of the sword. After it left his hand, Heavenly Reliance was like a serpent that had plunged into the ocean. It was even faster than when it was in his hand, slashing towards Hua Sengzan viciously. Scorching wind hell. However, Gu Yenying seemed to have been expecting this. Before the flying sword had even shot out, she had already unfurled her jade folding fan. With a gentle wave, rolling hot winds whistled and swallowed Hua Sengzan, sucking him into the scorching wind hell. Self-created domain. The heavenly sword missed and flew back into the palace master's hand. He pointed the tip at Gu Yenying. Gu Yenying, I'd like to see how long you can last. If you don't hand over Hua Sengzan, don't even think about leaving. Hua Sengzan knew far too many secrets of the Sword Collection Palace. He had to die. Very long. Gu Yenying smiled. Thank you, Commander Gu. Li Qingshan said. You're welcome. This is my friendship with Little Flower. It has nothing to do with you, but you better do something. Gu Yenying waved her hand without even turning her head. She waved her jade folding fan, stirring up a hot wind to melt the whistling sword chi, a self-created domain, and the manifestation of hell. Such a move was indeed powerful, but it also required a great deal of effort. It was impossible to maintain it for a long time, not to mention the fact that he had to block the attack of a great sword cultivator. All right. Li Qingshan no longer had any worries. He looked around at the hostile faces around him and the boundless Buddhist kingdom that glowed with golden light. Pride immediately filled his chest, and he raised his blade. I'd like to see what you're capable of. If you end up dying under my blade, don't even think about regretting it in the afterlife. Come, wretched demon, don't you dare speak so arrogantly. The first to strike was a pale-faced, slightly plump, middle-aged man in the distance. He was the Grand Master from the famed sect. He formed a seal with his hands and called out, "Freeze!" The simple word contained endless power. It was infused with his entire life's worth of cultivation, and it was the famed incantation of the famed sect, the freeze incantation. The Grandmaster smiled calmly. "I've already frozen this demon. Please kill him, Grandmasters." He was rather disapproving inside. "You really don't know your place. Even if you have the supreme strength to kill Ming Fei, with a single punch, even a demon king will die here with so many of us working together. Do you think you'll be able to overturn the situation?" Li Qingshan shuddered. He was immediately immobilized. "I'll lend you a hand, fellow." In a battle of life and death, even a split second of hesitation could determine life and death. "Guardian King Demon subduing," the dauntless monk bellowed out, and the 4 Guardian Kings struck together. Under the effects of the Guardian King Demon subduing formation, the 4 powers combined into a single strike, turning into a colossal vajra that smashed down. "Break!" Li Qingshan bellowed out. It was the tiger demon's fierce roar, breaking free from the freeze incantation in a single stroke and blocking the falling vajra with his blade. Boom! The ground cracked and collapsed, and the great hall shook. The Grand Master paled and could not help but take a step back. He never thought his freeze incantation would actually be broken so quickly, and the tiger's roar seemed to ring out right beside his ear, making him dizzy and suffering from a backlash. Before the tiger's roar had even subsided, the dragon's roar rang out again. At first, it was as thin as a thread, but in the blink of an eye, it blanketed the surroundings like a soaring dragon, directly pouring into his head. His blood surged, and he took another step back. The Chan of Devanaga, the dauntless monk, was alarmed. All he saw was Little and open her mouth slightly, and the dragon's roar rolled out endlessly. It was the supreme cultivation technique of the Chan Monastery of Devanaga, the Chan of Devanaga. Right now, she was so dignified. She was clearly still the outstanding disciple he had high hopes for, or even the successor of the Bodhisattva. Her white monk robes drifted about, and she no longer gave off the slightest sense of blasphemy. The Chan of Devanaga was even more wondrous and filled with zen. Even the monk kings could not help but admire her. "One will, why do you insist on going your own way, abandoning yourself to depravity?" Little and was speechless. The Grand Master staggered back 5 or 6 steps and spat out a mouthful of blood. He stared at Little and in disbelief, but the dragon's roar still refused to let him go. Instead, it grew louder and louder, like a rope slowly tightening around him. He basically could not breathe. A woman's graceful, pleasant voice rang out from behind. "I've come to assist you, fellow." It was like the sound of nature in his ears. A noblewoman with long, flowing hair held a pipa carved from green jade. She looked at Little and said, "The chant of Devanaga really does live up to its reputation. Come and try out my school of music's wondrous sound as well." She plucked the strings gently, and there was a clang cutting through the dragon's roar like a sharp blade. The Grand Master eased up inside and clasped her hands. "Thank you, fellow. I'll play the ambush from 10 sides to liven things up for you all. Kill these 2 demons quickly." The Grand Master of the School of Music smiled and plucked the strings even more frantically. Her hands left behind a series of blurs as if she had sprouted thousands of hands in that instant. There was the noise of the large strings twanging, the small strings cutting, the cavalry charging forward, and the clang of blades and spears. The invisible music rushed towards Li Qingshan and Little, and like an army. Suddenly, there was a flash beside her. Her dress drifted about, and a gloomy voice rang out by her ear. "Who do you want to kill?" Your Highness, don't. She raised her head and met the Dark Queen's cold gaze before seeing the myriad ghost banner in her hand. With a wave of the myriad ghost banner, the wails and wails of 10,000 ghosts rang through the grand hall, drowning out the surging music. The army had all been reduced to ghosts. The Grand Master of the School of Music was sent flying, colliding heavily against the glistening wall. The strings snapped one by one. Dark Queen, the Grand Master glared at her furiously. Chapter 1069. Mother. Little and said, You don't have to worry. Mother will definitely protect you this time. No matter what you do, Mother will support you with everything she has. Li Qingshan, you've killed that bitch. You've avenged me. I thank you for that too. The Dark Queen looked back at Chu Lai King and said, Xianyue is your daughter. Do you really want to kill her? My Ji clan is well established and flourishing. We have many descendants. We don't lack an unfilial son. Dauntless abbot, this king has failed to manage the clan properly. I've let down my ancestors, so please don't hold back. Kill these two demons quickly. Chu Lai King recovered his dignity and ordered firmly, all right. Then from today onwards, I no longer have anything to do with your Ji clan. You can kill me too. The Dark Queen waved her hand and summoned a few ghost kings. They roared out fiercely, accompanied by the wails of thousands of ghosts, dyeing the golden hall with a sense of foreboding. The dauntless monk bellowed furiously, How dare you use underhanded tricks in the holy land of Buddhism? Protector Jialan, world cleansing with the sound of Sanskrit. Above Great Buddha Mountain, a protector of Jialan flickered in and out, producing an obscure, sacred sound of Sanskrit. It was even vaster and more profound than the chant of Devanaga. Jialan was a great protector of Buddhism. The protector deities of all the temples were the wildflower blade Sanskrit was heavenly drum. Thank you for your auspicious words. And so on. There were a total of 18 deities. At the end of the wildflower blades was one of them. Edge, the protective formation of the Chan monastery of petals wrapped around was called the world cleansing formation. The pattern spread along all the bells and in the blink of an eye and below they covered his entire body. Rang out together. They flashed as if they were accompanying the sound of Sanskrit, causing his incomparably handsome face to have an even more sinister and cruel appearance. The wails of thousands of wildflower blade souls faintly discernible. The roars of the ghost overlapping with his body immediately turned and merging into cries. Li Qingshan's rose up from their bodies violently as he knelt on one knee. Demons and tiger demons always been suppressed had by the already Buddhist pushed Dharma. His potential to the Dark limit. Queen's expression and with the addition changed. Of the madman Zen, also felt broken tremendous pressure fall causing an enormous she endured burden. It with difficulty. The Vajra pestle and took the opportunity to press down heavily, wanting to smash him into powder. Yennying unleashed was affected slightly meant to be broken through she thought, in the first place. Fighting on Great Buddha Mountain laughed really maniacally as a sharp light. The two grandmasters of the School of Fame, his scarlet hair music felt like fire at ease, and his phoenix their bodies submerged spread open. In the great a gust of wind swept and their through, wounds rapidly healed an extremely powerful at the Dark Queen. It made no difference whether she was present or not today. The Vajra pestle was broken. If you want to die, the surface of the cut come to die. As smooth as Mother, a mirror. Don't worry. What saber is this? And I will take care of this matter. Was alarmed. At this moment, the Vajra had been condensed from the four of their powers through the Guardian King's demon subduing formation. It was far tougher than regular arcane treasures. Even the famed sword of the sword collection palace could not break without even looking back. Have you learned it? Li Qingshan's figure little spun, and nodded, and the ending flower saber danced wildly with him. Ever since she arrived, the frenzy contained a profound saber and stood beside him, and black they had held hands spread on the saber's edge. This was not to containing the power and of the tremor of the ox demon. Instead, in an instant, Li Qingshan was passing on the subduing formation burst of the sword scripture thousands of blade and earth to her, like a wild flower in full bloom. She did not disappoint. The Vajra demon,
Then come,
subduing
Li
formation,
Qingshan
was
laughed
broken,
aloud
and communicated with the
Vajras
Vajras retreated
blade
one
soul.
after another.
What are you
They had
waiting
no
for?
choice but
Are
to
you
retreat.
really going to use this
Their
move?
unbreakable golden
The
bodies
wildflower
were
blade,
as weak as paper
soul
in the
asked
face
in
of this
surprise
saber
and
light.
doubt.
The saber
Why are you
radiance
suddenly
was like a
concerned
tornado,
about me?
whistling
I'm just
as it
afraid that
broke
you won't
through
be
the
able to
hull
hold on
and the
before
roof. You can
the
even
layer
launch a
of
single
golden
strike
light
and
explode.
couldn't stop it at all.
You'll embarrass me.
Li Qingshan,
I don't want to end up
rushed
in
out
the
of the
hands
hall.
of these bald
In an
donkeys.
instant, the
You
boundless
bitch,
blue
shut
sky
up.
filled his
Li
heart.
Qingshan
He
barked.
looked up at
All
the
right,
distant
I'd
nine
like to see how
heavens,
you die.
and a bright smile appeared on his face. It wasn't just his blood that was boiling, but his soul as well. Don't you dare leave, wretched demon. The dauntless monk was both surprised and furious. Originally, he thought it was an impregnable cage, but it could not stop a single slash from his blade. In a daze, he discovered that he had still underestimated his strength. He was powerful enough to rival the 10 demon kings. Li Qingshan looked down and turned around. He gripped the hilt firmly with both hands and suddenly flapped the wings of wind and fire. He merged with the blade and swung down. Great Guardian Palm. The dauntless Guardian King launched a palm strike at the sky, also erupting with resplendent, golden light with the power to subdue demons. Thump, thump, thump. With 3 metallic clangs, the 3 Guardian Kings pressed against him and poured all of their power into him. Golden light suddenly lit up, blazing like the sun. The great Guardian Palm expanded to several times its original size, colliding with the descending blade of light with a rumble. There was a rumble, but it was not as great as he imagined it to be. The blade of light pierced the great Guardian Palm and cut into the Guardian King's avatar, advancing unstoppably, cutting through all obstructions and heading straight for the dauntless monk in the center. Great Guardian Wheel imprint. The dauntless monk brought his palms together and caught the blade. He stared at Li Qingshan in disbelief. You wretched demon. Bald ass. You wretched demon. Haven't you said enough? I've put up with you for far too long. Li Qingshan tossed aside the hilt of the blade and threw a punch at the dauntless monk's face. The dauntless Guardian King collapsed loudly, and the dauntless monk was sent flying. He smashed through 2 pillars before smashing through the walls. Chapter 1070. The pillar shattered, slowly falling towards the ground. The building collapsed, and the glazed roof tiles rained down. Sunlight poured in, shining with a rainbow glow. Everyone's expressions of shock froze on their faces. This was unimaginably powerful. Senior brother, the abbot, the unraging monk, and the two old monks cried out, "Don't worry, master. Our abbot's head is still pretty tough." Li Qingshan smiled. Although the dauntless monk had always been a nuisance to him, he was still quite nice to Little, and so he did not kill him. Otherwise, even a demon king with a tough body would only end up with his head exploding if he punched him in the head. "You damned disciple! I won't spare you today," the unraging monk said furiously. His demon chi surged with the supreme power of demon suppression, merging with his large, fat body. His fat immediately became knotted muscles, and he became scarlet red like fire as if he had been possessed by the demon of war. However, the banner on his back had the words demon suppression. Li Qingshan only smiled when he heard that. With the two words damned disciple, he had not purposefully held back in vain. Boom, boom, boom. The pillar smashed into the ground, and the great hall shook violently. The shattering of the glazed roof tiles filled the air, kicking up dust. The countless Arhat, maidens, and protector generals from the murals surged over together, about to drown Li Qingshan. A river of blood whistled over. The water was dark red and viscous. Countless skeletons moaned and wailed in it, extending their pale white arms. There were even a few powerful ghosts that brandished their claws and fangs, ready to devour people. The dark queen looked over in surprise, only to see Little and wielding a banner of white bone and blood. He waved it gently, and it actually seemed even better than the sect treasure of the Umberline sect, the myriad ghost banner. It was the supreme treasure of white bone, the blood sea banner. The sea of blood surged, filled with a deep, filthy aura. Wherever it passed by, the golden Buddhist light would pale in comparison. Whether it was the Arhat, maidens, or protector generals, they would all be swallowed up as soon as they fell in, drowning out the Buddhist kingdom. Only the 8 grotesquely shaped murals could leap out of the sea of blood. At first glance, they all looked somewhat humanoid, but upon closer inspection, they were not human. Some were exceptionally handsome. Some had the head of a snake and the body of a human. Some were hideous and ferocious. Some had 4 arms. And all of them had the power of the 3rd heavenly tribulation. Li Qingshan could tell at a glance that the hideous and ferocious mural was an Asura. Normally, one wouldn't be able to tell, but in the colorful and gorgeous murals, the Arhat and Celestial Maiden were just a foil. Only these 8 were the real protagonists. These were the legendary 8 divisions of the Heavenly Dragon. They were the Heavenly Dragon, the Yaksha, the Gandharv, the Asura, the Garuda, the Kinnara, and the Maharaga. They were the 8 types of deities that resembled humans, yet were not. They were all fated with the Dharma, and when the Buddhas preached, they would often attend and listen. The Heavenly Dragon and Dragon were the most important, which was why they were known as the 8 divisions of the Heavenly Dragon. They possessed an extremely important status in Buddhism, which was also the origin of the Chan Monastery of Devanaga's name. The Chan Monastery of Devanaga's supreme technique, the chant of Devanaga, sounded like a dragon's cry, but it actually contained the chanting of celestials. Li Qingshan let out a great laugh. You say, I'm a wretched demon, but these 8 are clearly not human either. Aren't they enshrined in the Grand Hall as well? Isn't the chant of Devanaga just imitating the voices of wretched demons? Why are you favoring one over the other? How dare you? How dare you? The 2 old monks bellowed. Damned disciple, the beings of the 8 divisions all admire the Dharma, so they're definitely fated with the Buddha and are enshrined by us. How is that something you can comment on? Said the unraging monk. Master, I'm fated with the Buddha too. The dauntless abbot even said I possess a deep Buddhist nature. After listening to the Dharma of the Zen heart, I even gained a little Zen heart. Unraging, there's no need to waste your breath on him. Hurry up and purge demons and protect the sect. Rationality is undivided, and Buddhahood is one. Fist of wisdom. A monk king punched out with both fists, forming the fist of the Buddha with both hands. His 10 fingers intertwined, hurling it towards Li Qingshan's back as hard as he could. This was the palm seal of Vairocana of the Vajra realm. It used great wisdom to break through the maze, preventing the enemy from escaping. Afterwards, it used the strength of Vajra to crush the enemy. It was the most powerful technique of the Chan monastery of Devanaga. The sword of Dharma wisdom. Another monk king raised a sword 5 feet long with both hands. His figure was small and hunched like a child wielding an adult's weapon, which seemed extremely uncoordinated. However, his expression was naive and simple, filled with sincerity. He bowed deeply and swung his sword towards Li Qingshan's head. He used the final form of the sword of Dharma right away. The child worships the Buddha. If he were not a true Buddha, then only death awaited him. At the same time, the 8 divisions of spiritual beings struck out together. The sky was peaceful, untainted by dust and dirt. It stood high above like a god, chanting softly. The dragon soared into the air, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, producing a resonant dragon's roar that rang through the clouds. When Li Qingshan heard these 2 sounds, he felt like they had entered his head from his left and right ear respectively. With a rumble, the 2 sounds combined and became the supreme technique of the Chan monastery of Devanaga, the chant of Devanaga. It was different from the chant of Devanaga of eminent monks. It was more primitive, lacking some of the profound Zen intent. However, it possessed even more wondrous destructive power, making his soul surge. Gandharv was graceful and beautiful. She only wore a white veil, but layers of unpredictable, colorful smoke coiled around her, giving off a heavy fragrance. It was enough to make people dizzy, yet they could not help but want to smell it. It was like a dream. Ahura was the most valiant and ferocious. He let out a battle roar and charged over with a weapon in hand, radiating with surging battle intent. He was basically no different from a true Ahura king, perhaps even purer. Yaksha was no less vicious than an Ahura. He had a green face, sharp fangs, and a pair of horns protruded from his forehead, but he moved swiftly and silently. He unfurled his wings and launched a swift attack. Kinara had a single horn on his head. He sang and danced gracefully, as if he was not fighting but attending a grand banquet. His steps changed constantly, making it difficult to grasp. He seemed to move slowly, but he arrived before Li Qingshan in the blink of an eye, grabbing towards his throat like he was dancing. Garuda let out a long, sorrowful cry. He unfurled his wings, blotting out the sun. Various solemn colors appeared, and his sharp beak stabbed towards the back of Li Qingshan's head. He was so fast that he struggled to react. Maharaga, originally had the head of a snake and the body of a human, but he suddenly turned into a huge black python. He opened his mouth, which was filled with endless darkness, and swallowed Li Qingshan. Although the 8 tribes of Devanaga were only conjured from a mural, the painter had clearly already comprehended the essence of the 8 tribes. They all possessed divine might, and they worked together with great teamwork. It was enough to rival the combined efforts of 10 great cultivators. And on Great Buddha Mountain, the sound of Sanskrit formation of world purification was several times more powerful. If someone who did not know what was good for them wanted to barge into the Chan monastery of Devanaga, there would be no need for the monks in the monastery to take action at all. Just the colossal mural was enough to make them die here. And just what kind of abilities did the person who could paint a mural like that possess? What of 5 absolutes immortal? Chapter 1071. Bang! Just as Li Qingshan was thinking that, a golden, barefoot foot appeared in front of him, crushing the sea of blood with a single stomp. Even Great Buddha Mountain trembled. The golden, barefoot foot was a calf even thicker than the pillars of the hall. Li Qingshan raised his head and met a pair of benevolent, peaceful, golden faces. His heart shivered. This was the great Buddha that had sat in the grand hall for thousands of years. Time seemed to stop. The great Buddha seemed to stand beyond the river of time. He was clearly just a statue, and his expression did not change at all, but he seemed even more lifelike than the various demigods and semi-devils. He seemed even more lifelike than all the creatures he had seen before. Countless emotions seemed to flow and surge behind the golden Buddha's face. He did not show the slightest bit of arrogance. As a matter of fact, he seemed even more peaceful than mortals, but he was unreachable, overlooking the 6 realms and the 3,000 worlds. The great Buddha had gathered the power of belief from millions of believers, possessing a sliver of true Buddhist nature. Every single movement of his possessed great might, on par with the great guardian king's palm that the 4 monk kings unleashed together. He was even more powerful than the fire god Zhurong that Li Qingshan had once fought. So this is the most powerful existence of the Chan monastery of Devanaga. He's not some reclusive sweeping monk. Instead, he sits right on top of Great Buddha Mountain. Back in our south, even if Cheongchi took action, he probably wouldn't be so powerful. The saying, if a god obstructs us, we'll slay a god. If a Buddha obstructs us, we'll slay a Buddha. That was only the nonsense of mortals. Only by personally witnessing the existence of gods and Buddhas, even if it was only a sliver of will or a sliver of spirituality, could they understand the terror of gods and Buddhas. And the one before him was not a god on the level of fire god Zhurong or demon god Cheongchi either. Instead, he was the ancestor of all Buddhas, the Buddha's Tathagata. Li Qingshan no longer had the strength to care about his surroundings. Only by concentrating all of his willpower could he contend against the Buddhist nature of the great Buddha. The wide, golden Buddha's palm was raised high into the air. It seemed extremely heavy and slow, pressing down slowly towards Li Qingshan's head. The Buddha's palm was only several dozen meters wide, but it gave him the feeling that it was boundless with nowhere to run. With every inch he pressed down, the pressure on his body multiplied. A cold smile appeared on Chu Lai King's face. Even a great cultivator would be smashed to dust by this palm, not to mention the fact that he was surrounded by the demigods, 8 tribes, and 2 monk kings. Even in his current position, he was in great danger. The Grand Masters of the Academy also let out a sigh of relief inside. After seeing the dauntless monk knocked away, they no longer had the ambition to purge demons and demons. It would be for the best if the matter could be resolved so easily. Before the Buddha's palm arrived, Garuda's golden beak was already about to peck the back of Li Qingshan's head. A flawless hand stretched out and gently grabbed the golden beak. It was little Anne. She waved her hand, and a string of golden prayer beads flew over. They spun and turned into 33 skulls that let out a strange cackle. Then they turned into 33 skeletal demons. Pale samadhi flames of white bone burned in their eye sockets, and their bodies were dyed with a layer of golden light, showing a strange posture where Buddha and devil coexisted. Bang! Dang! The wisdom fist imprint and the Dharma sword basically struck the two skeletal demons at the same time. The skeletal demons were blown away, but they climbed back to their feet with a flip, still cackling. A deep fist imprint and a sword slash appeared on their white bones, but it was not fatal. Skeletal demons did not care about their lives in the first place, and the Buddhist techniques that specialized in suppressing evil in the world did not seem to be particularly effective against skeletal demons. Instead, two other skeletal demons used this opportunity to swipe down with their claws and bite with their teeth, forcing the two monk kings to retreat and defend themselves. The other skeletal demons all lunged at the 8 tribes' heavenly dragon. The chant of Devanaga was immediately silenced. No matter how vicious the Asura's attacks were, they were unable to kill a skeletal demon whose body was even tougher than an arcane treasure so easily. Gandharv's mysterious fragrance was useless too. No matter how unpredictable the Asura's dance steps were, no matter how swift and silent the Yaksha's movements were, they were unable to avoid the encirclement of over a dozen skeletal demons. Maharaga swallowed 3 skeletal demons in a single gulp, but he immediately began to writhe about in pain. In particular, Garuda, whose beak had been grabbed by little Anne, had its glowing wings latched onto by 2 skeletal demons. They bit at them viciously, causing its golden feathers to drift about in a mess. Its cries became even more sorrowful. In a single moment, the numbers had been reversed, and it was such a forceful reversal that it left all the cultivators dumbfounded. In particular, the great Grandmaster of Moism took the greatest pride in his life from the puppet kings in his possession. Every single puppet king was as powerful as great cultivators, and they did not fear death. However, compared to these skeletal demons, they paled in comparison, and their numbers paled in comparison too. As a result, he immediately suffered a vicious blow. Jin Fugue and Yu Wuyang exchanged glances. They shared similar shock and doubt. Aren't we still in the 9 provinces? A battle, no, a war on this level was something they had never seen in their lives. The Dark Queen was both surprised and overjoyed, but there was also a hint of melancholy within her pride. She no longer needed her protection. No one could harm her anymore. She sneered at Chu Lai King. Do you regret it? The fierce king of Chu couldn't believe that this was his daughter, and he couldn't help but feel a trace of regret. Although the Ji clan was well established and had many descendants, none of them could compare to her, not even Ji Xuanri. If she became king of Chu, perhaps she would be the most powerful king of Chu in history. Coupled with Li Qingshan's cooperation, she might even be able to bring an end to the South Shine Kingdom. Perhaps just now, he should not have been so ruthless with his words. However, as soon as the thought appeared, he immediately dismissed it. He was not the type of person to be overly cautious and indecisive. He could no longer go back on what had happened today. The kid from back then has become so terrifying now. Gu Yenning sighed inside. She said to the nearby master of the sword collection palace, "It doesn't matter what you want to do, palace master. Why did you have to provoke them? It won't end well now, will it?" The master of the sword collection palace was currently controlling the heavenly sword to continue attacking the scorching wind hell. When he heard that, his face sank. He also felt rather vexed inside. Just what kind of monsters had he provoked? Originally, dealing with Li Qingshan was a casual move he had made. If he could not achieve his objective, he would just eliminate him. However, he never thought this chess piece would overturn the board in the blink of an eye, almost trying to devour him as the chess player. Everyone shared the same thought. If these two people did not die on Great Buddha Mountain today, was there still anyone in the 9 provinces who could stop them? Li Qingshan suddenly felt his body lighten. It was not because the attacks from the 8 tribes, Heavenly Dragon, and the 2 monk kings had been blocked, but because the golden Buddha's palm above his head had suddenly changed targets, slamming towards Little, and instead, the Buddha's eye opened a little more, staring at her. Little, and did not block it forcefully. With a gentle shake of the blood sea banner, the golden Buddha was sucked into it. The blood sea banner had always been a space of its own, and unlike the Azura field, it was specially used for capturing. Attacking with the river of blood would not be able to demonstrate its true power. Chapter 1072. Before he knew it, the monk king of the 7 treasures had arrived in the grand hall. He stared at Little and furiously as Tathagata of myriad treasures shimmered behind him. He held 7 Buddhist treasures that glowed with rainbow light. He seemed dignified. Originally, he was still thinking about how to take Little and back to the Dragon Province's Lingua Temple, but he never expected something like this to happen. Even when Little and stood beside Li Qingshan when she killed Ji Xuanri, he still held on to a sliver of hope, or perhaps it was a fantasy that there was some inside story behind all of this. His impression of Little and was just too good. Only when the 33 prayer beads that had once defeated him turned into 33 skeleton demons did his fantasy completely shatter. Fury from being deceived and fooled immediately surged into his head. He could not hold it in anymore. Enemy of Buddha. Little Anne's heart rippled. It made sense, yet there was also some disdain. That's not a bad title, Li Qingshan smiled. Enemy of Buddha, as the name suggested, was an enemy of Buddhism, but not just anyone had the right to be called that. Even the soaring Locust King, who had killed millions and was absolutely irreconcilable with the Chan monastery of Devanaga, did not necessarily have the right, let alone regular demons and monsters. However, the path of white bone and great beauty she used could immediately make these 2 words appear in the minds of all eminent monks of Buddhism. The general principle
if there
was to slander
anything
the
that could
Buddhist
restrain
Dharma,
Buddhist techniques,
and the oath was to
it
kill
would be the
gods
numerous
and
precepts
Buddhas
of Vinaya.
She cultivated
The
it
precepts
layer by
protected
layer
the laws
just
of
so that
Buddhism.
the title of
So they
enemy
were
of Buddha
originally
would
targeted
become
at
even more
Buddhist
true
disciples.
until she became
Meanwhile,
the white bone
Little
bodhisattva
and had
the
inherited
monk
the relic
king of the
of the
7
divine,
treasures,
none of
was
the South
furious.
Sea.
Compared
He no
to the
longer
chant
said
of
anything
Devanaga,
else.
he
The
drew a
precept of
circle
4
with
parts
his
was
hands
closer
and
to the
pushed
foundation
forward
of her
forcefully.
cultivation.
As a result,
subduing of
the
the 7
monk
treasures,
king of the 7 treasures
the
could
7
only
Buddhist
watch as
treasures
the Buddha
shot
came
towards
crashing
Little,
over,
and with
a thought
7
flashed
streaks of
through
light.
his mind.
This time,
She is clearly
Little
the
and did
enemy
not
of
have
Buddha.
the 33
So
prayer
why
beads
is
to
her
block
Buddhist
it,
technique
and the
so
blood sea
profound?
banner surged,
Even able to
trapping
transcend
the Buddha
2
for a
great
while
sects.
was already its limit.
Bang! And the monk king of the 7 treasures, who was on full alert,
pressed
would
the
not
side
be
of his
struck
face
so
firmly
easily by the
against
Buddha,
the Buddha,
slaying
his
sword
limbs spread
either.
out in a
Suddenly,
shape,
her face
smashing
became
through an
solemn,
entire wall of the
solemn,
grand hall
and
loudly,
inviolable,
and falling
she chanted
towards
softly.
From the
Precept
corner
of
of
4
his
parts,
eye,
he saw
precepts.
an ugly
The
monk,
monk
with a
king of the
crooked
7
mouth
treasures
and slanted
shuddered
eyes
and
leap out
became
from the cliff.
immobilized.
His ugly
He
face
cried
was
out in
also
surprise.
stunned. This was not a lawyer
before
for
the monk
lawsuits,
king
but
of the
a
seven
respectful
treasures
title
could even warn
that
him.
Buddhist disciples
The Buddha
used
had
to refer
already
to
collided
great
with
cultivators
the ugly monk
of Vinaya.
Another
The
thought
Vinaya school was
flashed
in charge
through
of
his
passing
head.
down the laws
That
of Buddhism.
face seems a little familiar,
and it had great
the
prestige
dauntless
in
monk
Buddhism.
was sent flying
It could
by
even
a punch
punish the
from Li
disciples of
Qingshan,
other sects
although
and
Li
temples.
Qingshan did not
However,
want to kill him
because
he
the
had not
precepts
gone
were too
easy on
strict
him
and
either.
cultivation was
He
too
fell off the
difficult,
cliff.
ordinary
and only
Buddhist
returned to his
disciples were
senses
unable to
after
endure
quite
it.
some difficulty.
Therefore, there were very
He was
few
both
disciples,
surprised
and
and
lawyers
furious.
were even rarer.
Ignoring the half-collapsed
He had never
face,
thought that the
he
enemy of
immediately
Buddha
flew up
would be a great
right when he was about to
cultivator.
face Li
While
Qingshan
struggling
in a battle to the
he
death.
continued to
He saw the
activate
great
the
Buddha.
seven Buddhist
He had worshipped
treasures.
his entire
Grandmaster
life
Seven
towards him.
treasures.
With a
your
monk
Buddha
king of the seven
shout
treasures
and wave
stuffed the
to it.
blood sea banner.
He could not help
Seven
but become
monk
stunned.
king of air
Although
seven
he had not
treasures.
fallen for Little
Shao
Land's
King
precepts,
King
Li
E7
Qingshan's
treasures
punch
had
had
originally
said,
been to
and
cripple
said,
him,
what,
so that he would
a
not run out to
young
cause
Buddha,
trouble again.
when the seven Buddhist
His mind
treasures
was in
collided with the
turmoil,
Buddha,
and his head
they
was
were all
spinning.
sent flying.
So how could he
the
react?
Coral Mountain was
As a
directly
result, the
smashed
great
to
Buddha
pieces.
and the two
He had no
shapes
time
fell
to
towards
feel
the
sorry
mountain
for
together,
them,
because he
Abbot,
discovered that
I've
he
been
was still
impolite.
unable to move.
Little and said with
Buddhist
an
almost
techniques
undetectable
were righteous
voice
and dignified.
There was no
and could
rumble
not be
of the
invaded
Buddha
by external
landing
evils.
below the mountain.
The seven treasures
with a
monk
flash
king,
of golden
who
light,
cultivated the
Buddha
seven
had
treasures
already shaken
sutra,
off all
had an
his blood.
extremely
A
powerful
pair of
will.
golden
Originally,
bare feet stood
he was
on
least
great
afraid
Buddha
of
mountain
a
again,
law incantation,
radiating with
like
Buddhist
the body
light like a
locking
rising
curse.
sun. The Buddha's face was emotionless, but some of its peacefulness had dispersed. It took a step and arrived before Little and, slamming down with its palm, Li Qingshan, come and help. Gu Yening called out from afar. The scorching wind, hell was already on the verge of collapse under the attacks of the Heaven Reliance Sword. She could retreat easily, but protecting Hua Sungzan would be difficult. Qingshan, you go. Leave this to me. Little and said, all right. Li Qingshan believed in Little N's strength and cleverness. Even if he could not emerge victorious, protecting himself was not a problem. His true enemy was not the Chan Monastery of Devanaga. He glanced at the master of the Sword Collection Palace, and his eyes brimmed with killing intent. At this moment, a scarlet-red figure blocked his way, wrapped in black chains. The two words, demon suppression, drifted behind him. Master! Li Qingshan frowned. This was the opponent he wanted to face the most. He would rather face the great Buddha than become enemies with the unraging monk. Apologies, Qingshan. My skeleton demon can't keep him busy. Little and communicated as he dodged the Buddha's huge palm. At the end of the day, the 8 tribes of Devanaga did not possess much intelligence, so they became embroiled in battle with the skeleton demon. The other 2 monk kings were the same as the 7 treasures monk kings, treating Little and as their greatest enemy. Only the unraging monk's gaze remained locked onto Li Qingshan the entire time. I've always called you a damned disciple, but I never thought it would come true. Whatever, I better just call you Qingshan. The unraging monk sighed. As long as you like it, Li Qingshan smiled. I didn't think there would be a second time, so soon, said the unraging monk. Master, you're not my opponent. Li Qingshan said seriously. Chapter 10:73. Li Qingshan felt his chest heat up. As he gazed at the scarlet-red face, he suddenly had no idea what to say. The grand hall slowly collapsed as the majestic chanting echoed endlessly. It was invisible and weightless, but it felt like a mountain pressed down on him. It was like a surging river, constantly slapping and shaking up his soul. He could only suppress it with the spirit turtle. His body was scarlet red, like fire too. Hot blood surged through his thin skin, like a river of magma flowing beneath the surface, ready to surge out and swallow him at any time. Limits were meant to be broken through, and breaking through limits came with a price. He could not last for too long in this state. However, the pain of both internal and external pressure paled in comparison to the hint of guilt in his heart. Just recently, the owner of this face had once used his life to protect him.
allowing him to leave the demon suppression tower calmly, and allowing him to refine the end wildflower blade. He had always been clear about his debts of gratitude and grievances, yet he owed him far too much. Demon suppression, the unraging monk bellowed out. A huge shadow obscured the sky. The pitch-black demon suppression tower descended from above, as lofty as a mountain. Li Qingshan raised his head. This was the largest demon suppression tower he had ever seen
Only
in his
when
life.
Li Qingshan
This was not only
because
because
of
the
the King's
unraging
demon
monk's
subduing
extremely
formation,
high cultivation
sent
of the
dauntless
demon
monk
suppression
flying with a
statuary,
punch,
but also
and
because of
and
his
turned the
extremely
situation around in a
powerful
single
demonic
stroke
nature.
did the great
Li
grandmasters
Qingshan
return to their
did not
senses.
dodge. Right
The
when they were
moment the
about to
demon
purge the
suppression
demon
tower descended,
they were
he
stopped
looked
by
at
the
the demon
unraging
suppression
monk
tower
and said,
"Gaze a
"Master,
shot towards the
I might be a
unraging
demon
monk,
or a demon,
filled with
but
disdain,
I'm not a bad
ridicule,
person." And criticism.
Great
The unraging
Buddha
monk
mountain
faced
shook,
them coldly,
and Li Qingshan's
unfazed.
figure vanished
Master
from
Zhu
below
said, "The demon
unraging
suppression
monk.
tower. You've
The
been deceived by
unraging monk
demons,
shuddered
leading a
inside
wolf into
and
your
clenched
home,
his fist.
resulting in the
I
death
know,
of the Ming
below
concubine.
the demon suppression
That's
tower,
already a grave
Li
sin.
Qingshan's
Yet you
ears
still
fell
refuse to
silent.
cooperate with us.
The mighty sound
Hurry
of
up
Sanskrit
and kill
was
this
isolated
demon to redeem
outside,
yourself,
allowing his
Don't
agitated
tell me
soul to
you're
calm
still
down.
trying to protect
He understood
this
that
demon.
the unraging monk
Old
had
bastard,
done
if
this
you
on
hate
purpose.
demons so much,
He closed his eyes.
why don't you go
but
slay
he raised
dragons
the end
in the
wildflower
Yangtze?
blade.
What are you
I
making
can't stop
so
here
much
yet.
noise for?
Qingshan,
The
give me some
unraging
time.
monk called out.
The unraging
You
monk's
dash.
voice
Master
rang
Zhu
out.
was taken aback.
Master, it's useless.
He never thought he would
Li
be
Qingshan
bold enough to retort.
seemed to have guessed what the unraging
Stop
monk
being
wanted
so
to do.
stubborn.
He could
Even
not
if he's
help
not a
but shake
demon,
his head.
what he's done is
gripped
still
the hilt
punishable
with
by
both
death.
hands.
Whereas
But
the
he did not
raging
swing
monk,
down.
who
Don't
abhorred
be
evil
angry.
in the past.
This is a good disciple you
Chu
took
Lai
in.
King walked over
The
slowly
scholarly great
and said sternly,
Grandmaster,
"Why would I
shouted
tolerate
in anger
evil and
Master
nurture
Zhu.
evil?"
The
However,
unraging monk
there's
looked
probably
back.
something
Enough
very
nonsense.
suspicious about
Hurry
this
up
place.
and open the pagoda.
Otherwise,
So
why
we can
would he
kill
insist
him.
on fighting here if
Master
he's not
Zhu
crazy?
raised his
Even
sword.
if we want to kill
His
him,
face was filled with
we need
killing
to get to the
intent.
bottom
The
of this
unraging
first.
monk
Said,
I can
the
send him to the
unraging
demon
monk
suppression
did not
hall.
trust
Demon suppression
Li
hall.
Qingshan
Do you still
blindly.
want another soaring
Instead,
locust king?
he found the entire
Master
matter to
Zhu
be very
interrupted
unreasonable
and said with a sneer,
Li Qingshan was
North
violent,
Moon is not
but
the flying
he was
locust
not a
king.
man without brains.
The unraging monk
There must
said
be a very
firmly,
deep reason
he knew
why he
there
would
had
go
been
as far
many
as to
conflicts
expose
between the
himself
North Moon
and kill
the cultivators
the
of the
Ming
Green
concubines
Province
at a
but he
time
would
and
never
place
simply
like this,
believe that it was
even if he
all
was in
one
dire
side's
straits.
fault.
None of the
Grandmaster
great grandmasters
unraging.
were
I
stupid
know
either.
you've always
They
pitted
obviously
wretched
had their
demons,
suspicions,
but there definitely
but
won't
this
be a
did
second
not
outcome
affect their
for what
determination
happened today.
to kill Li Qingshan.
Don't ruin the
no matter what the
monastery's
twists and
unblemished
turns
reputation
were.
over a
It
single
was
misstep.
not important at all.
All the great
Just the
grandmasters
fact
gathered
that
around
a demon king
and
had
said,
publicly killed
originally,
a great cultivator
when Li
was
Qingshan
enough
was
to
trapped in the
incite
guardian
their common
king's
hatred
hatred for a
subduing
common
formation.
enemy.
Don't
Aside
you
from the
forget
two
your
great
identity.
grandmasters of the
Chu
School
Lai
of
King
Music
said
and the
sternly,
famers,
no
the
matter
other
how
great
many reasons he
grandmasters
had to
struggled
prove that
to
the Ming
interfere.
concubine
Afterwards,
deserved to
when the
die.
Buddha's
He
palm
had to kill
slammed
Li
down,
Qingshan.
they felt
no
like
matter
there was
what.
no need
As
for
a
them
matter of
to
fact,
interfere anymore.
this was no longer a personal grievance, but a conflict between humans and demons. Even if the person Li Qingshan had killed was not the Ming concubine, but some other unrelated great cultivator, he still had to lead everyone to kill the North Moon here as the leader of the cultivation community of the Green Province. Is identity even more important than good or evil? The unraging monk bellowed furiously. His scarlet face was rather vicious, as if the monk of fury had come back to life. In the past, the monk of fury did not care about his identity. He did not care whether they were mortal cultivators, humans, or demons. He would kill the evil and save the good, stubbornly going his own way. In the end, he was surrounded by enemies and condemned by everyone, basically forced into dire straits. He had to rely on the protection of the sect to protect himself. He struggled to calm his anger, almost suffering from chi deviation. It's been so many years, yet you still don't get it? Chu Lai King asked. Yeah, I don't get it. Is it wrong to be benevolent? Is it wrong to punish the evil and promote the good? Is it wrong to be equal? The unraging monk widened his eyes furiously. Junior brother. The dauntless monk climbed up Great Buddha Mountain again. The huge golden Buddha stopped halfway. He had also unleashed his Guardian King's avatar to block it, so the impact he received was not particularly severe. His face became even uglier as he stared at the unraging monk in shock. It was like yesterday had replayed itself. The monk of fury from the past had questioned him 3 times in the Grand Hall. Perhaps the monk of fury had never died. He had just hidden himself beneath Great Buddha Mountain, refusing to let his anger be incited again. Chu Lai King frowned firmly. Teacher Zhu said, "Your Majesty, this bastard allied with demons in the past, which is unacceptable to our cultivation community. Now that he's been contaminated by demon chi, he has completely fallen into the demonic path. The Chan Monastery of Devanaga really doesn't know how to choose disciples." With a clang, he drew his sword and pointed it at the unraging monk. "Baldass, if you still don't open the tower, don't blame my sword for being merciless." Before he had even finished talking, he suddenly took off, rushing towards the demon suppression tower. Everyone else thought he was trying to cut through the demon suppression tower, eager to fight to the death against the North Moon. They praised him inside for his courage. However, Teacher Zhu was frightened. He felt like an invisible force had gripped him. Chapter 1074. The blade in Li Qingshan's right hand smashed through the demon suppression tower. He spread the fingers of his left hand and enveloped Master Zhu, gravity of the earth. At the same time, his scarlet eyes were like a tiger's, filled with malice, the nightmare tiger's demonic eyes. "Be careful, fellow." Only then did the Grandmasters realize something was amiss and called out. When they forced the unraging monk to let Li Qingshan out, they also felt at ease suppressing him beneath the tower. Never did they think he would actually be able to capture someone through the demon suppression tower, catching them off guard. Now that they thought about it, just now, Li Qingshan had used this exact move to save Hua Sengzan from the palace master's sword. It was not that their memories were bad, but because even Qi practitioners could use a method like retrieving something from thin air. They had never thought it would be an innate ability. Wretched demon. All Master Zhu saw was Li Qingshan's vicious grin rushing towards him, and all of his hairs stood on end. In particular, when he saw the scarlet eyes, he became even more frightened. He thought of the Ming concubine's horrific fate and tried his best to break free and distance himself, but the invisible force was so great that he struggled to resist. It was impossible for him to achieve something that even the myriad poison ancestor could not do in the past. Who knew how many times stronger Li Qingshan was now compared to back then? "Oh no, if I'm frightened by this wretched demon and lose my courage, I'll probably be dead for sure. The heart of the world is my heart, unity of man and nature." Master Zhu let out a great roar and rushed up to receive him. He unleashed the supreme technique of Confucianism, the 3 strategies of celestial and human, as hard as he could. His scholarly robes fluttered, and he became righteous and impervious to all evil. He broke free from the shock of the nightmare tiger's demonic eyes, impregnable, and no longer showed any fear on his face. Myself, kill my way like a gentleman from ancient times, and capture the standing between the heavens alive and the
Only
earth.
then did
Everyone
sword
returned
is the
to
weapon
their
of a
senses.
gentleman.
Immediately,
Master Zhu swung his
none of their
sleeve and
arcane
raised his
treasures
sword,
or
swinging it
techniques
down.
dared to attack.
The strike was
They were
upright
all
and
dumbfounded,
peaceful.
dignified,
How is this possible?
and majestic.
Concubine
It did not
Ming
possess
had been
the
killed in a
sharpness
single
of the heavenly
punch.
reliance
She
sword,
could be said to have been
nor the
caught off
sincerity
guard,
of the Dharma
having
sword.
fallen into the
There was
wretched
only a
demon's
sense
trap.
of magnanimity.
However,
he
Teacher
wanted to
Zhu had
establish
used
his
his full
heart for the
strength,
world,
yet he had been
establish his
captured
life
so
for the people,
easily by the wretched
inherit
demon.
the supreme
Only
techniques
Wuyong
of the
had
past,
vaguely guessed
and
this
establish
outcome.
peace for
He
all
had
generations.
personally experienced
Layer
the power
upon
of
layer
the wild
sword
flower
lights
blades
overlapped each other.
The Azure
and
weapon,
pressed down
the
towards Li
wild flower
Qingshan,
blade,
and it was
even
both
sharper than
offensive
the
and
10
defensive
famed
without
swords,
any flaws.
and the blade techniques
Teacher
of the
Zhu
wildflower
stood
blade soul
high above
were
the city
countless
wall,
times
looking
more
down
profound
at
than
Li
Teacher
Qingshan's
Zhu's
swordsmanship.
He was like a scholarly
the
general
wildflower blade
who could
soul
bring peace
was
to the
limited
world
by
with
its
his
own
pen
strength,
and
so
settle
it was
the world
unable
with his
to
martial
unleash
prowess.
its full power.
He was preparing
It
to
had
command
almost
the three
forced him,
armies
and
a
destroy
great
the
general
roving
king
bandits
into dire
Everyone
straits.
eased up inside.
However, they thought,
after becoming one
Master
with Li
Zhu
Qingshan,
really
it
is
was
a
no
grandmaster
longer
of
a blade
Confucianism
technique
after
that
all.
belonged to the
The
9
noble sword
provinces.
style has already
Instead,
reached a level of
it was
perfection,
a blade technique
and it's
that
powered by
belonged
the
to the
three
Azure
strategies
realm.
of celestial,
How could Teacher
a
Zhu
supreme technique of
Li
Confucianism,
Qingshan's opponent?
multiplying its
Evildoer,
power.
how
The
dare
evil
you?
warding sword
Teacher
in his
Zhu
hand
was
is no
horrified
weaker
than
than
the
the strange
10 famed
vibration
swords
spread
of the
through
sword
his
collection
body,
palace.
causing his bones
He
to
only
crack.
needs to hold on for
He
a
could
little
no
longer,
longer move,
and we'll be able to save him in
no
time
longer
and kill
maintain
this
his
wretched
gentlemanly
demon.
demeanor.
Li Qingshan
You think you can call me a
continued to use
bald
the gravity
donkey?
field with his left
Li
hand
Qingshan roared
as he wielded
and
his
slashed
saber
down
with
his
his
blade.
right hand.
Blood
He
splattered.
did not give off
Teacher
any
Zhu
ferocious
suddenly
aura.
felt his
In
vision
fact,
split into two.
he even seemed to be
and
careless.
he saw his other half.
The saber
He
flashed.
also
the
saw
noble
the
sword
shocked
was
faces
broken,
of
and
the
the
great
evil warding sword
grandmasters
was
around
broken.
him.
Come
All of
here.
this took a long
Li
time to
Qingshan
describe,
grabbed Teacher
but
Zhu's
it
head.
actually happened in the blink of an eye. Li Qingshan drew, grabbed, shouted, and slashed down with his blade. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Teacher Zhu was beheaded. Everyone suddenly remembered Li Qingshan's words. If you become a ghost under my blade, don't regret it. No, I will not die here. A white nascent soul flew out and hurriedly fled. However, a huge hand followed closely behind, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. You want to leave? Freeze. The great Grandmaster shouted in a low voice and used the freeze spell. Li Qingshan's figure paused. Evildoer, don't be so arrogant. Fellow Taoist Zhu, run. The great Grandmasters attacked together, using the ultimate techniques of their clans. Li Qingshan shuddered all over. As soon as he broke free from the freezing curse, a vast, boundless field expanded out beside him. He discovered he was currently standing in a sea of golden wheat that reached his waist. A few strands of white clouds drifted through the blue sky as the warm wind kicked up ripples of wheat. The air was scorching yet fresh, which was enough to calm the mind and make people drowsy. An old voice came from the horizon. This is this old man's secret farmland. Fellow Taoists' killing intent is too heavy. Why don't you rest here and enjoy the scenery of the countryside? You are a great cultivator of the agricultural sect. Li Qingshan asked. I'm just an old man plowing the fields. Rain falls from the heavens, and all things awaken. The great Grandmaster of the agricultural sect gave an order, and the scenery of the secret farmland suddenly changed. Countless sinister plants drilled out of the earth and rushed at Li Qingshan. This is the so-called countryside scenery? Li Qingshan smiled coldly. You brought about your own destruction, so don't blame others. Fellow Taoists, quickly make your move and slay the demon. Before he finished, the sound of zither strings rang out. In a split second, killing intent soared into the sky, as if thousands of soldiers and horses were attacking. It was the sound of the great Grandmaster of the School of Music's pipa. Although it wasn't as vast and grand as the Sanskrit chanting, it was as sharp as a sword. It cut through the undulating waves of wheat
and slashed at Li Qingshan. The blue sky suddenly darkened. The wind blew, and the clouds gathered. Suddenly, there was the sound of thunder. A Taoist wearing a tall crown and feathered clothes stood in the wind and clouds. He held a peach with sword in his hand, and lightning coiled around the sword. He drew an arc and pointed it at Li Qingshan. God of thunder, help me, heavenly thunder, slay the demon. A huge figure formed by interweaving lightning appeared. It had a pair of wings on its back and a sharp mouth and monkey face. Its left hand held a wedge, and its right hand held an awl. The heaven and earth lit up, and a bolt of lightning struck down at Li Qingshan's head. This was the most powerful thunder technique of the school of Taoism. In the past, the patriarch of the 100 schools of thought, Zhou Tong, cultivated this technique. Compared to this great grandmaster of the school of thought, it was like a child playing house. It was as if the god of thunder had descended into the world, enforcing the law on behalf of the heavens and slaying the demon. If I want to kill him, who can stop me? Chapter 10, 75. The surging power of tremors was added to the strike. There was a flash of black light, and the garden's secret realm was destroyed. Master, listen to me. Doing good is rarely rewarded. Punishing evil is always met with retribution. Life has never been equal. There are no gods above us. Justice is only within the blade. Li Qingshan took a step out and chanted slowly. Whether it was the vicious plants, the sharp zither music, or even the terrifying lightning, they were all cast behind him. The unraging monk let out a long sigh. It was all in vain. Oh no, fellow Feng is still outside. The Grand Master's expression changed. How is this possible? A withered old man cried out involuntarily. He gazed at Li Qingshan, who had suddenly appeared. His face was filled with disbelief. How could his garden's secret realm be cut open so easily? A domain of its own was an extremely powerful and rare method of cultivation. Even among great cultivators, there were not many who could grasp it. It was most skilled at fending off enemies and trapping them. The master of the Sword Collection Palace's cultivation in the path of the sword had reached the very limits, yet he still failed to get through Gu Yenying's scorching wind hell. The huge, golden Buddha possessed the great power of a god, but it had also been trapped by Little N's blood sea banner for a while. Originally, he thought Li Qingshan would have to do something to break free, and Chu Lai King and the other grandmasters would never give him that opportunity. He never thought he would destroy the garden's secret realm with a single strike. However, little did he know that Li Qingshan possessed the supreme ability, the tremors of the ox demon. Who knew how much space it had smashed through? Even the Mist Province cauldron had been forcefully shattered, let alone his puny domain. The end wildflower blade could already endure the power of tremors. Through the profound blade techniques of the wildflower blade soul, it basically cut through anything. You're the one plowing the fields. A huge black shadow loomed over them and rapidly approached them. A pair of scarlet eyes were like fire. Its scarlet eyes shone like fire as it looked down at the withered old man. The Grand Master of the School of Agriculture took a step back. His expression changed drastically as he shivered inside. He swung a gleaming hoe as hard as he could at the shadow, but he seemed extremely weak. He had no will to fight at all. The School of Agriculture was not good at fighting in the first place. Even this magic treasure was not used to kill enemies. Since the great swordsman Ming Fei, who wielded a famous sword, was killed with a single punch, how could he have the confidence to fight against Li Qingshan? However, at this moment, apart from him, all the other great grandmasters, including Chu Lai King, were still in the Hall of Great Strength. They were all taken into his farmland mystic realm. The master of the Sword Collection Palace did not seem to have any intention of helping either. He stubbornly attacked the scorching wind hell, as if he really wanted to kill Hua Sengzan at all costs. As a result, this agricultural grandmaster had no choice but to face Li Qingshan alone. He had originally thought that this was his ultimate move to save his life and trap the enemy, but he never expected that he would fall into such an awkward and terrifying situation. As he swung the hoe, he hurriedly withdrew from the garden mystic realm, but there was a time difference. Li Qingshan grabbed the agricultural school grandmaster's neck and lifted her up like he was lifting a chick. He spun her around in his hand, and with her head facing downwards, he threw her down forcefully. "Go back to the fields, if you're plowing." The grandmaster of the agriculture sect had yet to react. I felt my neck tighten, and then the world seemed to spin around me. I saw a face full of fear reflected on the mirror-like gold bricks. It was my face. The face was rapidly enlarging. No, boom. More than half of his body was stuck in the solid and thick golden bricks of the hall of great strength, leaving only a pair of slightly bumpy legs, struggling in the air. Blood overflowed and flowed on the ground. Just as Li Qingshan was about to deliver another blow, he saw that Teacher Zhu's nascent soul was about to fly out of the hall of great strength, while Chu Lai King and the others had already escaped from the mystic realm of farmland. He charged over with a murderous aura, and a bolt of lightning tore through the air. Li Qingshan flapped his windfire wings and dodged the lightning strike. Then he pounced towards Teacher Zhu's nascent soul and said, "Old man, I'll spare you this time, but if you dare to come out and court death again, I'll take your life." The two bumpy legs immediately stiffened, standing there without moving at all, like a sprout that had just been planted. The grandmasters all found this extremely comical, but when they thought about how they would probably suffer the same fate if they ended up in Li Qingshan's hands, how could they laugh? They could not help but think back to the great cultivators who had faced Li Qingshan from the very beginning until now. Concubine Ming had been reduced to a pulp, and even her nascent soul had been directly shattered. The dauntless monk had been sent flying with a single punch, clearly still holding back. Teacher Zhu's body had been destroyed, and it seemed like even his nascent soul would struggle to escape. Only this fellow Feng could be considered lucky. Their desire to purge demons and demons could not help but fade slightly. They did not have a fellow disciple they were familiar with who had died to Li Qingshan's hands, nor did they have a grievance as great as Teacher Zhu's. Concubine Ming and Ji Xuanri's fates were miserable, but they were not their wives and children after all. If they took such a great risk just for the sake of a demon, it did not seem to be worth it anymore. Just like how no one would actually be foolish enough to purge demons and demons in the Ink Sea, the North Moon did not seem to be much different from the Dragon King of the Sea. However, they were rather caught between a rock and a hard place right now. They could not just watch as Teacher Zhu was killed, or what dignity would they have left to remain in the Green Province? And the King Chu had already issued an order, so they could not just ignore it. "North Moon, I swear I won't stop until I kill you." Chu Lai King roared furiously and turned into a streak of light, chasing after Li Qingshan. Teacher Zhu had been cleaved in half right in front of him, which was already a great humiliation to him. In the blink of an eye, another person had fallen victim to his vicious hands, which was basically like 2 slaps to his face. He was filled with hatred. He gripped a golden seal in his left hand and a tiny cauldron in his right. They were both simple and heavy. However, with the entire world in perspective, there were probably not many people who were faster than Li Qingshan right now. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived before Teacher Zhu's soul nascence and reached out with his hand. He smiled viciously. "Let's see who can save you this time. Wretched demon, I'll take you down with me." Teacher Zhu was rather staunch, blowing up his soul nascence without the slightest hesitation. The unraging monk had already returned to his normal state, but he seemed rather dejected. His efforts were still futile at the end of the day. Suddenly, he saw the great Grand Master of the School of Agriculture stabbed into the ground without moving. His expression became rather strange as he probed. "Fellow Feng, should I help you out?" "No." A heavy cry rang out from underground, and his tone eased up slightly. "Unraging Master, you don't have to worry about me. I can get out by myself. If you want to worry about me, you better deal with that wretched disciple of yours first." "Sai, I've offended you," the unraging monk said apologetically. As a disciple of the Chan monastery of Devanaga, he obviously could not assist outsiders, but it was impossible for him to assist Chu Lai King and the others in capturing and killing Li Qingshan. Suddenly, he shook his head and returned to the foot of Great Buddha Mountain. Before the demon suppression point, he collapsed on the rock and fell asleep. In the great hall, the two bowed legs began to move again, but they sank inch by inch until they were completely buried in the ground. Chapter 10:76. Li Qingshan's pupils constricted. Time seemed to slow down as the nascent soul's inherent form disintegrated, turning from the shape of an infant into a hazy white sphere. Cracks appeared on the sphere as streaks of dazzling white light shot out. Under Master Zhu's final will, it flew towards him rapidly. Under such speed, there was no time to dodge at all. A strong sense of danger surged into his heart. He had used the tiger demon's fury and end of the fanatic at the same time, and his body was already on the verge of collapse. He could not endure another nascent soul explosion. "Fellow Zhu, damn the wretched!" The great grandmasters all shouted angrily, but they secretly sighed in relief. They would finally be able to kill this wretched demon this time. Master Zhu sacrificed himself for the sake of purging demons. This was enough for the entire cultivation world to remember for 1,000 years. Although Chu Lai King felt rather regretful that he could not personally kill Li Qingshan, he still felt delighted. An idea struck Li Qingshan. He made up his mind and grabbed the nascent soul. The figure of a spirit turtle appeared behind him and suppressed it. The nascent soul immediately stabilized greatly, and the white light that shot out was forcefully suppressed. However, more and more cracks appeared on its surface, ready to explode at any time. Under the shocked gazes of the great grandmasters, Li Qingshan made an extremely bold move. He stuffed the nascent soul into his mouth and swallowed it. The spirit turtle's suppression on the inside was even stronger, but the cracks had already covered the entire surface of the nascent soul. The battle city was broken, and the sound was broken. If the great grandmasters were like only be ordinary people who had been swept into a mountain flood, demon tired of couldn't control themselves. Everyone thought the same thing. Were slapped hard. They saw Li Qingshan suddenly billions of rays of light. His eyes widened, and his mouth opened to an unbelievable degree. The grand dazzling light at the top of the mountain was enveloped, since he could not completely suppress it. Countless glazed tiles and golden bricks were shattered. The tiger demon's breath world was cleansing a ray couldn't exhale. The hall that had existed for 10,000 years. A dazzling streak of white light and turned into ashes, rushing towards Chu Lai King. The fierce king and the others, like a mountain torrent, bursting out of a five-pointed star appeared. As soon as the white light left his mouth, it flickered with 5 different kinds of light, and contained the mysterious changes of mutual taking the shape of a restraint. By the time it rotated to resist the impact of the white light, it had already blotted out the sky against the flow and covered the earth. Li Qingshan even shook his head maliciously, causing the white light to bend and sway from his neck to his mouth, ensuring that the area of attack had been melted away by the violent large enough, revealing I guarantee that I won't let a bad person go. 4 fangs, nor will I let a good person go. Emitted a metallic luster. The white horse is not a horse. This didn't stop him from revealing a ferocious smile. Grandmaster level martial sage's
sound of
expression
Sanskrit
had calmed down.
Then,
and the
a
turbulence
hazy
in his
figure
soul
appeared in the air,
had calmed
looking
down.
like a horse.
He was
but
full
not.
of fighting spirit.
It was white
and swung
yet
his
not
last
white.
man wildflower
When the rays
silver.
of light entered
Again,
it, they all turned
deep in the
into
soil,
nothingness.
The
as
great
if they were
grandmaster
directly
of the
denied by
agricultural
his
school
words.
felt
Mechanical
the earth
War
tremble.
City.
He tried his best
Mahist
to go
great
deeper,
Grandmaster
because he was on
waved
the
his
great
hand
Buddha mountain
and summoned
the
a
soil
majestic
and rocks
black
were
city.
all soaked
It
in
was
Buddhist
filled with
light,
countless
so the
black
speed
cannon
at which he
holes
traveled through the
and
earth
1,000
was very
cannons.
slow.
They
However,
all fired
he had the
at
patience.
the white light.
Right now,
Dazzling
he
heavenly
just wanted to
sound.
leave this
The
ghastly
music
place
school's great
and return to the
grandmaster waved her
farmland of his
hands
dreams.
and hurriedly
Although Li
plucked the zither
Qingshan had
strings.
said that waves of
Very
sound waves
rudely,
were condensed,
he found it
and
to be
did
very
not disperse.
reasonable.
Those who
Instead,
plowed the
they
fields
stacked
should
up in front of
remain in
her.
the fields
The great
obediently.
grandmasters
They should not
all
wander
used their
around,
ultimate defensive
purging
techniques.
demons or
If it
upholding
was
justice
an ordinary,
was not something
nascent soul
an old
cultivator,
farmer like
they
him should
might
be
be able
doing.
to resist
Although
it.
he might be
However,
mocked by his
this
fellow
was a
cultivators
nascent
for fleeing
soul
in the face of
cultivator's
battle,
self-destruction.
plowing the fields
After
had
being
never been
restrained
something
by Li
glorious.
Qingshan,
If
the
he
power
were
no longer
competitive,
spread in
he would
all
have
directions.
never chosen the agricultural
Instead,
school
it
in the
was
first place,
restrained and
much
pointed
less
in one
reach his
direction,
current realm of cultivation,
increasing its destructive
only when he
power
reached
by
the
more
depths
than
of the
10
earth
times
and entered the crisscrossing underground caverns of the Green Province did his withered face smile. He could finally use the earth escape technique at full strength. He sat on a rock and took out a tobacco pipe. Happily, he took a great drag and even blew out a few smoke rings. He had grown all of the tobacco in the farmland's secret realm. Not only were they harmless, but they were even very spiritual. Regular people would become addicted to secondhand smoke. "Old man, let me have a taste." A pair of cold compound eyes lit up in the darkness behind him, and a hoarse voice rang out. "You are." In the Chan monastery of Devanaga, countless monks raised their heads at the top of the mountain in shock. The grand hall had vanished. However, even more people could no longer care about that. A great Buddha was currently rampaging through the monastery, pursuing a tiny white figure. Boom! The Buddha's palm struck down, reaching several meters deep into the mountain and leaving behind a huge, deep handprint. Large swathes of temples and halls collapsed. Little and was sent flying by the shock wave, basically brushing past the edge of the palm to avoid it. Before she could even catch her breath, there was a flash of golden light from the corner of her eyes, and the Buddha's palm struck out again. She was unable to dodge anymore. Bang! Her bones shattered and scattered, and the samadhi flames of white bone were extinguished with a flash. The strange cackling came to a halt, and a skeleton demon was smashed to pieces. Its body, that was even tougher than arcane treasures, was as fragile as a clay puppet before the Buddha's palm. In the face of danger, Little and summoned a skeleton demon to block the palm strike for her. She used the opportunity to pull away in a hurry. So far, 7 of the 33 skeleton demons had already been destroyed. Only 3 had been destroyed in the chaotic battle against the 2 monk kings and the 8 legions of heavenly dragon. The other 4 had all been smashed to pieces by the Buddha's palm strike. The skeleton demons that were on par with great cultivators could only be used to block the great Buddha's blade. Fortunately, the great Buddha did not possess any abilities or techniques, nor did he possess sufficient intelligence, making it very easy for him to predict his movements. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to emerge victorious. Even with that being the case, he was the most powerful opponent she had ever encountered in her life. And this is just a statue. If it were a true Buddha, just what kind of abilities would he possess? If it weren't for the fact that I practice the path of white bone and great beauty, which prevents me from being suppressed by the Buddha's nature, I probably would have fallen into a bitter battle already. Sure enough, killing Buddhas isn't that simple. Little and thought to herself. She held the Buddha slaying sword in her hand, but she never had the chance to attack. She might be able to injure the great Buddha with a single slash, but if she was struck by a palm strike, the outcome would not be much better than the skeleton demons. if she summoned all the skeleton demons and formed the skeleton demon formation to suppress the great Buddha, she might be able to create an opportunity. However, she did not do that. Apart from the 5 prayer beads she held in her hand, the remaining 21 skeleton demons were all spread out. Under the terrified gazes of the monks, a hideous skeleton demon climbed up a bell tower with great difficulty. Under the assault of the vast sound of Sanskrit, its body trembled violently. Its joints seemed like they would crack at any moment, but it was unable to drown out its strange cackling. Finally, it reached the top and crushed the buzzing bell with a swipe of its claw. The vast sound of Sanskrit weakened slightly. It ignored the monks and lunged towards the next bell tower. This happened above and below Great Buddha Mountain. The skeleton demons charged left and right like there was no one there, shattering countless bells and drums. This happened to be the foundation of the Sanskrit formation of world purification. The 8 tribes had all been annihilated. The 2 monk kings landed at the foot of Great Buddha Mountain feebly. Now, there was no one in the monastery who could stop them anymore. The vast sound of Sanskrit gradually settled down, ensuring that Li Qingshan was no longer suppressed. Now, there's finally a place I can go. It was the place she had wanted to go to ever since she entered the monastery. Bang! Another skeleton demon was smashed to pieces. She did not take another glance at it. Instead, she gazed in a certain direction on Great Buddha Mountain. Just when she was about to fly over, 2 figures blocked her way. Invincible Buddha, the dauntless monk, and the monk kings of the 7 treasures stared at Little and furiously. Although they both seemed rather disheveled, they were filled with determination. One used the Guardian King's avatar, while the other used the 5 Buddhist treasures. There were 2 monk kings blocking her way in front, while the great Buddha pressed over from behind and slammed down with another palm strike, immediately forcing her into dire straits. She smiled in an alluring manner. "I've been waiting for you for a very long time." Little and swung the blood sea banner without even looking back, sucking the great Buddha into it again. Then she raised her hand. The law of 4 parts? Abstinence. The furious expressions of the 2 monk kings stiffened. They were immobilized. The familiar sight appeared before them once again. Bang! They glanced at each other from the corner of their eyes. They should not have been so close to each other. Rumble! The great Buddha slammed into the side of the mountain, producing a long gully. With a rip, the blood sea banner cracked open, and the blood-red color became much fainter. Little and stowed it away and flew towards the forest of pagodas in the monastery. The exquisite pagodas were scattered all over the place, old and new. They consecrated the sarairas left behind by past eminent monks. These were not bones that had survived cremation, but true condensation of power. To be able to be condensed into sarairas, one had to undergo the 2nd heavenly tribulation at the very least. These sarairas were the best resources for the path of white bone and great beauty. Little and brought her palms together and closed her eyes. "Seniors and masters, I'd like to borrow your sarairas." Chapter 10, 77. The palace master's cunning doesn't seem like something a sword cultivator would do. In the ruined hall, streaks of light flashed through Gu Yeniying's eyes. She stared at the palace master deeply. The scorching wind hell was her ultimate technique, but it was definitely not the method of battle she was most skilled in. In terms of cultivation and foundations, it was even more impossible for her to rival this great sword cultivator. Normally, her domain should have been breached a long time ago. Even if it had been cleaved through in a single stroke, she would not have been surprised at all. However, while the palace master's attacks were vicious, he used the most ordinary sword technique of the Sword Collection Palace. As a matter of fact, just now, her domain was clearly on the verge of collapse, and the palace master's sword moves had weakened as well, allowing her to hold on. However, when the hall was destroyed and she tried to force back the streaks of light and leave with Hua Sungzan, the streaks of light had suddenly become resplendent, giving her no chance at all. This was as clear as it could be. The palace master had purposefully held back. Up until now, he, Li Qingshan's great enemy, had instead remained outside the battlefield with ease. He did not have to face the sharp blades and terrifying abilities, and he had even used Hua Sungzan to keep Li Qingshan here. Otherwise, Li Qingshan only needed a single thought, and he could take off. No one could stop him. And what do you know about the way of the sword? The palace master said coldly. The deaths of concubine Ming and Ji Xuanri did not seem to affect him much. Everyone thinks the Sword Collection Palace is unyielding and resolute, while the Umbral Insect is full of cunning. Looks like even I can't help but be affected by this false impression. Gu Yenying raised an eyebrow and could not help but sigh. Sword cultivators were one with the sword. No matter what kind of sword intent they possessed, they would often possess a hint of rationality and coldness, as this was the nature of the sword. However, in order to control ghosts, ghost cultivators could not avoid their minds from being affected. Most of the time, they would instead become a little more emotional. The Dark Queen and the Ming Queen were a stark contrast. The difference between yin and yang was like the difference between a man and a woman. The viciousness of a woman was displayed to the fullest in the imperial palace, but all it did was turn her rival in love into a human swine, while the viciousness of a man was enough to bring chaos to the world and kill people. Not only would they not feel ashamed, but they would even say something like, "That's what a man should be like." I've said it before. All the people of the Sword Collection Palace deserve to die. This person deserves to die the most. A gloomy voice rang out. The Dark Queen held the myriad ghost banner and stared at the master of the Sword Collection Palace coldly. The power of the Sanskrit world cleansing array had been greatly reduced by little, and the suppression she felt had lessened a lot. Your Highness, the Dark Queen sure has foresight. Gu Yenying smiled. As a visitor from the Dragon Province, she did not choose to side with the Ming concubine, which surprised many people. After all, whether it be the duties of the Hawkwolf Guard or their temperament and reputation, the Sword Collection Palace suited them better. Yenying, let's change the way you address me. I am no longer a princess. The Dark Queen waved the myriad ghost banner, and the wails of 10,000 ghosts rang out. She summoned a few more ghost kings and lunged towards the master of the Sword Collection Palace together. Although she was concerned about Xian Yu's safety, she knew her limits. Even if she went over to help, she would not be able to shake up the great Buddha. The ghost kings probably would not even be able to approach him. She could already tell that if Li Qingshan did not retreat, Xian Yu would not retreat, while Li Qingshan would definitely save her friend and even kill the master of the Sword Collection Palace. As a result, the crux of everything was actually this. The master of the Sword Collection Palace suddenly erupted with resplendent light, falling on the top of Great Buddha like a star. Not only did it shatter the wails of 10,000 ghosts, but even the ghost kings all retreated, afraid to approach him. Sure enough, there's still plenty of time in the future. Sister, there's no need to act on impulse. There's still plenty of time in the future. Gu Yenying felt the pressure on her lesson. She turned around and asked, "Isn't the sect master coming to help?" The master of the Umbral Insect stood with his hands behind his back, standing on the side of the mountain in the distance. This prominent figure of the demonic path of the Green Province paid close attention to the various battles, but he did not follow the King Chu's orders to kill Li Qingshan, nor did he come to deal with his old enemy, the master of the Sword Collection Palace. His attitude was extremely ambiguous. Who knew what he was planning? If he were willing to take action, he would be enough to stop the master of the Sword Collection Palace. Fellow Gu, I'm an honored guest of the king's estate, while Xianyu is the future sect master of our Umbraline sect. She's in a dilemma just like Master Dauntless. The master of the Umbraline sect snickered, revealing a mouthful of ghastly white teeth, but he did not seem troubled at all. At this moment, Li Qingshan swallowed Master Zhu's soul essence and spat out furiously. White light whistled down. Hee hee, another one's dead. What a pity, what a pity. If I could refine a great cultivator's soul essence into a ghost slave, it would be extremely useful, said the master of the Umbraline sect. Gu Yenying's words made the Dark Queen's heart skip a beat. She raised her head and gazed at Chu Lai King's figure in the whistling white light. Now that bitch, concubine Ming, was dead, and Crown Prince Xuani had died too, both the Sword Collection Palace and the Chan Monastery of Devanaga had been weakened. Out of the 3 great sects of the Green Province, only the Umbraline sect remained powerful. With Xianyu's strength, she was already the best candidate to inherit the position of King Chu. He just could not put up with this, but as long as he could endure this battle, she could slowly persuade him, and there might not be no chance for a change. Perhaps they could even rekindle their past friendship. The grand hall was enveloped in white light, reversal of the 5 elements, blurring the myriad worlds. With a wave of his hand, Chu Lai King pushed the pentagram before him forward. It suddenly expanded, becoming 10 times, 100 times larger. It revolved above Great Buddha Mountain, making the surroundings distort. Who knew how many times more powerful it was compared to the hasty palm strike he had just now? Li Qingshan seemed to sink into a mirror that constantly changed shape. His limbs would be elongated at times and compressed at other times. Everything before him became grotesque. Only Chu Lai King's figure constantly expanded, like an indomitable god, gazing down at him coldly and dignifiedly. With a flip of his left hand, a golden seal pressed down. For large words were deeply engraved on it, King of Chu's seal. In that moment, Li Qingshan felt like he was under the Buddha's palm again. As the golden seal pressed down, he heard the voices of millions of commoners. There were the cries of the marketplace, the chanting of scholars, and the sobs of children. It encompassed all the sounds in the world. It was meaningless. When they gathered together, it was like a tsunami blanketing the surroundings. Die! What a powerful move! Li Qingshan praised. Just this move alone was enough to compare with the Dragon King of the Sea. If it was an ordinary cultivator, he would have been smashed into minced meat. However, even this praise was twisted and distorted, becoming very strange. His figure expanded against the wind, reaching 10 zhang, 100 zhang, reaching more than 700 zhang. He had transformed into the body of a demon. A pair of iron hooves landed on the top of Great Buddha Mountain, and his palms slapped upward. Boom! The iron hooves sank deeply, and countless cracks spread out on the mountain. If it were not for the Buddha's light that had been soaked in for 10,000 years, it would have collapsed. You can't kill me with just this kind of move. Li Qingshan's laughter rumbled like thunder. His palms blocked the King of Chu's seal. Endless power surged into his body, and the distorted world returned to normal. Chapter 1078. Rumble! A huge boulder collapsed and rolled down from the top of the mountain with a trail of dust. It smashed through several halls in a row, but it showed no signs of slowing down. Instead, it rolled faster and faster, destroying everything along the way. The monks fled in all directions as if the end of the world had arrived. The Annihilum Light Chan master arrived in a flash and blocked the boulder. He smashed it to pieces with a palm strike. Raising his head, a pair of hooves stood like pillars that held up the sky, while his pitch-black body seemed to be forged from black metal. Great Buddha Mountain seemed to have grown significantly taller. A mountain had appeared out of nowhere, standing majestically on the Buddha statue. Its wide, magnificent wings were unfurled like clouds that shrouded the sky, enveloping the mountain. However, what it cast was not a shadow, but whistling winds and dazzling firelight. Great Buddha Mountain was burning. Wretched demon! He struggled to calm his fury. He wanted to stand up and fight to the death, but he knew that he was just a moth flying into a flame. The shock waves of battle were not something he could endure. The various head monks all took action, blocking the boulders one by one. They were all renowned eminent monks in the Green Province, but right now, all they could do was remove the damage the shockwaves from the battle had caused to the monastery as much as possible. Boom! A bolt of lightning illuminated 500 kilometers, striking Li Qingshan's head. His head tilted slightly, and his entire body became numb. The King of Chu's golden seal pressed down by several meters. Fellow cultivators, use this opportunity to kill this demon. Before the great master had even finished speaking, a few puppet kings took off into the air. They were either human or beast, with the largest being the size of a building, while the smallest was only half the size of a regular person. Ha! You're taking advantage of the situation. Li Qingshan widened his eyes and blew gently. A gust of wind blew over and blew the Taoist grandmaster away. With a swing of his tiger tail, he swept out with the end of the wildflower blade. The sharp gales swept up the blade aura, sucking in the two puppet kings and immediately reducing them to smithereens, exploding loudly. The sound of the zither drifted over, accompanied by the chanting of the incantation. It made him feel agitated, so he looked over. The great master of the School of Music and the great master of the School of Fame stood extremely far away. They were afraid to approach him again. Two flies. Li Qingshan turned his head and calmed his mind. His hands released the power of vibration, constantly adjusting the frequency of strength and weakness. It caused the King of Chu's golden seal to resonate violently. The light was being cut down layer by layer. Chu Lai King said, "Commander Jin, General Yu, your cultivation should be higher than this, right?" Jin Fugui and Yu Wuyang looked at each other as if they were talking about killing. The School of Music and the School of Legalism were no match for the School of Military and the School of Legalism. However, they had never given it their all. Jin Fugui had always been on good terms with the unraging monk, so he also found this to be very doubtful. Yu Wuyang, on the other hand, had a good impression of Li Qingshan, and because of Han Xiongji, he didn't want to kill him. Originally, he planned on going with the flow and watching Chu Lai King and the others purge demons and demons, but he never thought Li Qingshan would be so powerful, killing Master Zhu in front of everyone. Even the School of Agriculture's fellow Feng had disappeared. Chu Lai King had even taken out the King of Chu's golden seal, yet he still struggled to kill him. If he still did not use his full strength, it would be rather inexcusable. Black Cloud Sand Prison. Jin Fugui raised his hands, and a few strands of fine, black sand appeared in his palms. His face no longer had the slightest hint of mediocrity or kindness on it. His face was as dark as a ruthless official's. He raised his hands, and the sand swirled in the air, surging towards Li Qingshan like a black cloud. Li Qingshan turned his head, and a gust of wind whistled over. Originally, he wanted to disperse the black cloud sand, but the black cloud sand constantly surged up, enveloping his surroundings. Even the gust of wind was unable to reach him. When the black sand landed on him, he experienced intense pain that penetrated deep into his soul. He could not help but frown. This was a domain specially used for battle. It was nowhere close to the School of Agriculture's secret realm of farmland. Yu Wuyang's eyes narrowed, and he locked onto the blade that whistled through the air. His tall body crouched down like a pouncing beast. He pressed against the spear in his hand, and his eyes flashed. The spear pierced through the air like a black dragon rising from the ground. Clang! The blade and spear collided, and the tip of the spear immediately cracked. Yu Wuyang felt a great force from the blade, pushing him backwards. He said in surprise, "Just a tail possesses so much force." He made up his mind. "How can I, Yu Wuyang, lose to a tail?" The muscles on his arms bulged, and he blocked the blade firmly. The whistling gust of wind came to a halt. "Good job, fellow Taoists." The Taoist Grandmaster said, "Violent thunder descends from the heavens." The thunder god's shadow suddenly spread its wings and let out a cry that sounded like an eagle or a cow. It released thousands of lightning bolts that bombarded Li Qingshan's body. Li Qingshan's huge body was unable to dodge, and he could only wait to be slaughtered. Under the state of Tiger Demon's fury, he could not use any defensive divine arts and could only rely on his huge body to withstand the attacks. His originally straight waist immediately bent. "These guys are really troublesome." "Brat, have you been castrated? They want to kill you. Hurry up and kill them all, even if they are your fathers. Is this the time to show mercy? Do you really think you are invincible?" Frenzied Flower Saber Soul, who had been silent since the start of the battle, suddenly scolded. Li Qingshan's heart shuddered. What happened today was dangerous, but he was not exactly in dire straits. He did not have the resolve to risk his life. Everything had happened because of the Sword Collection Palace, so he did not have much killing intent towards these grandmasters that he did not know, intentionally or unintentionally. He would always leave some leeway to test out his methods. Originally, he could have killed the Taoist Grandmaster of the School of Agriculture with a single punch, instead of sticking it in the ground as a joke. Originally, he could have killed Master Zhu in a single stroke, denying him the opportunity to escape with his soul nascence. He had never felt like Master Zhu could harm him in any way. All he hated was his foul mouth. He did not want to kill a single person from the Chan Monastery of Devanaga. Even towards Chu Lai King, who was bent on killing him, he could not help but think, "He's Little Anne's father. I can't kill him." It was exactly these subtle thoughts that bound his limbs like invisible chains, making all of his abilities and blade styles falter by just a tiny bit. Even if it was a battle between two mortals, if one of them had the determination to kill, while the other did not, it was enough to decide the outcome of the battle. The master of the Sword Collection Palace looked up at Li Qingshan, and his face became sterner and sterner. This power did not make sense at all. Even great demon kings with lifespans as long as 10,000 years did not all possess such martial prowess. Do you understand the principle of playing with fire, Palace Master? I'd advise you to return to the Sword Collection Palace quickly. You might be able to keep your life if you rely on the protective sword formation. Gu Yenying said, "If he doesn't die today, my Sword Collection Palace will never have a day of peace. Since you can't wait any longer, I'll give you a quick death." The heavenly sword was suddenly raised high into the air, and its glow expanded with a whistle. By the time it slashed down, it had already become a huge sword several hundred meters long, slashing towards Gu Yenying and Hua Sungzan in the hell of scorching wind. Its final target was Li Qingshan. Chapter 10:79. The streak of light was as blue as the sky, as if it had sliced through the sky. It had almost fused with the space there. Before it had even landed, the hell of hot wind began to shatter, revealing Hua Sungzan. With a white flash, Gu Yenying arrived before him. She faced the streak of light with her jade folding fan, as she frowned slightly. Even if she blocked the attack, she would not be able to guarantee that she would not be injured. Just the shock waves were enough to kill Hua Sungzan. Suddenly, a black cloud swept over, enveloping them and blocking the streak of light. As it turned out, it was a huge black hand. Boom! The king of Chu's golden seal pressed down viciously, and Li Qingshan knelt on one knee. The ground caved in and cracked. His muscles bulged as he gritted his teeth, using a single hand and his entire shoulder to support the golden seal. He grabbed the streak of light firmly. Blood dripped from his hand, pouring down like a storm, turning into flames in the air. The streak of light collided with the tiger bone and rumbled like dark thunder. Qingshan! Hua Sungzan looked over, only to see a smile appear on Li Qingshan's huge, vicious demon face. "I'm not dead yet," he said to Gu Yenying. "Take him away." Jin Fugui sighed inside. Even a demon was so loyal, willing to risk everything to save his friend. Just how evil could he be? It was not unreasonable for the unraging monk to protect him. In comparison, the master of the Sword Collection Palace's methods did not seem very upright. However, now that he had fallen into a situation like this, his death was certain. With that in mind, the black sand swept out and withdrew its power, while Yu Wuyang withdrew his spear and stood there. From the moment the master of the Sword Collection Palace struck, when he was pressed down by the golden seal, there was no longer any suspense in the battle. No matter what they felt, they could only watch him die. "Don't die!" With a hawk's cry, Gu Yenying grabbed Hua Sungzan and turned into a fierce gust of wind flying towards the azure sky. She moved extremely quickly. "Elder Hua, are you planning to betray the sect?" The master of the Sword Collection Palace's voice traveled into the distance, landing in Hua Sungzan's ears. His face changed, and the sword on his back thrummed. Suddenly, he drew his sword and swung it at Gu Yenying. He roared vaguely, "Destroy the sword!" Gu Yenying's 5 slender fingers on her right hand bent and changed, grabbing the edge of the sword like an eagle's claw. The astral wind collided with the edge of the sword, and sparks flew everywhere. With a ping sound, the edge of the sword broke into pieces and scattered to the ground. Hua Sungzan spat out a mouthful of blood. He turned his head to take a look, then fainted completely. He was still holding on to the hilt of his sword tightly. Li Qingshan relaxed. The destruction of his natal sword would definitely cause him great harm, but with Gu Yenying looking after him, his life would not be in danger. Courting death, the master of the Sword Collection Palace turned his cold and indifferent gaze back to Li Qingshan. Although many accidents had happened, it was time for him to remove this chess piece. With a turn and a swing of his sword, several huge fingers flew into the air and landed heavily on the ground. He strode forward with composure. The streak of light from the Sword of Reliance brushed past Li Qingshan's arm and landed on his mountainous body. Blood sprayed as a horrific slash extended from his left shoulder all the way to his waist. Blood flowed like a river and was set ablaze. The fierce wind whistled as the tiger tail swung towards the master of the Sword Collection Palace with the wildflower blade of doom. The master of the Sword Collection Palace glanced to the side and swung his sword without even looking back. Clang! The Heavenly Reliance sword collided with the wildflower blade of doom. A wave of sharp force rippled out, shaving off a layer of Great Buddha Mountain. The ruins of the Grand Hall were completely obliterated. In a single moment, the blade and sword clashed over 1,000 times, demonstrating the greatest blade and sword styles in the world. Although Li Qingshan only had a tiger tail, he had comprehended the sword concealment of heaven and earth, so he knew the master of the Sword Collection Palace's sword style like the back of his hand. For a moment, they were evenly matched. Great Buddha Mountain sank layer by layer. Slay! With a flash of lightning, the The Grand Master of Taoism flew over. Behind him, the figure of the god of thunder wielded a wedge in one hand and an awl in the other. He swung it at Li Qingshan's head viciously. Boom! Li Qingshan's head tilted to the side, and a hole appeared in his head. His body shook as well. The king of Chu's golden seal descended another 30 meters, and he bent over deeply. Break! The master of the sword collection palace used this opportunity to swing down. The tiger tail was severed, and the wildflower blade of doom flew into the air. Cornucopia, collect! The eyes of the Grand Master of the School of Miscellany, who had always kept a low profile, suddenly lit up. He leapt forward and tossed out a dark metal basin. Green light surged out, enveloping the wildflower blade of doom and drawing it into the basin. The cornucopia was the most renowned supreme technique of the School of Miscellany. It specialized in collecting the arcane treasures of the enemy. No matter what the arcane treasure was, it would be difficult to retrieve it once it entered the cornucopia. He had set his eyes on the value of the wildflower blade of doom a long time ago. However, he knew his own limits, so he did not dare to provoke Li Qingshan so easily. He was afraid that he would end up like Concubine Ming and Master Zhu. That would not be worth it at all. Now that he finally had the opportunity, he could not let it go. Myriad sword technique. The master of the sword collection palace formed a seal with his hand and pointed at Li Qingshan. The heavenly sword split into 2, then 4, then 8. Thousands of streaks of light formed a river of light, drowning Li Qingshan within. Li Qingshan's bones thrummed. His entire body was covered in blades, covered in slashes. The places that had not been struck were riddled with wounds, revealing his jagged bones. Blood flowed down like tiny rivers. The tiger demon's fury had already reached its limit. His body was collapsing. He had reached the end of his path. Die, wretched demon! Chu like king bellowed. He pressed down with both hands, and the golden seal descended heavily. Boom! Great Buddha Mountain shook violently. Li Qingshan shook his head with a smile. Why don't you just kill me? The mountainous body of the demonic god was crushed under the golden seal. In the blink of an eye, the surging demon chi dispersed. The North Moon was dead. Everyone's expressions varied. The Grand Masters seemed to be in some disbelief, but they all let out a sigh of relief. The vicious battle had finally ended. In front of the demon suppression hall, the unraging monk leapt to his feet and gazed at the mountain peak in the distance. His face was furious, and he shattered the tablet beside him with a palm strike. The master of the sword collection palace sheathed his sword. So what if he possessed supreme strength? If he had no sense of propriety and acted on impulse, he would not be able to escape death in the end. Chu like king stowed the golden seal away. Great Buddha Mountain shrank by over 30 meters, and even the ruins of the Grand Hall had been completely obliterated. All that was left were the words King Chu Lai's seal. Rumbles constantly rang out below the mountain as towers collapsed one by one. Little and wandered through the forest of towers, avoiding the pursuit of the Buddhas, as he plucked Sariras one by one. The skeleton demons all gathered in the forest of towers as well. They were like a group of diligent farmers constantly harvesting. They did not seem affected at all. Chu Lai King said, "Xianyue, Li Qingshan is already dead. I can still give you a chance, but right now," before he had even finished speaking, a familiar voice rang out, interrupting him. "Sorry to disappoint you. That was only the first round. The second round has just begun, but this time I won't give you any more chances." Then a loud and clear phoenix cry resounded through the heavens and earth. Flames filled with vitality burned fiercely, shooting into the clouds and turning into a soaring phoenix. Chapter 1080. The magnificent phoenix gazed at great Buddha mountain, dyeing the sky a fiery red. The flames in the sky suddenly drew in, condensing to the limit, and suddenly blossomed into a ring of fire. At the center of the fire, his scarlet hair drifted in the wind. Li Qingshan stretched lazily. Dying once in a while doesn't feel too bad. He rubbed his neck and rolled his head before waving his hand. Ha! Everyone, we meet again. He grinned, revealing his sharp canine teeth. His scarlet eyes were as red as blood. Everyone was dumbfounded. They had no idea how to respond. Then he turned to Little and in the pagoda forest. And give me a moment. I'll be there very soon to help you. Little and smiled. If you still don't come, I'll deal with it myself. That won't do. Li Qingshan looked at his right hand and muttered to himself, is it the heart of slaughter? It won't be that simple. The palace master's face sank. He could vaguely sense that something was off. The current Li Qingshan gave him a sense of danger. He drew his heavenly sword again. Your Majesty, King Chu, Li Qingshan, if I can kill you once, I can kill you a second time. Chu Lai King swung his sleeve and leapt into the clouds. He sent a palm strike towards Li Qingshan. Reversal of the 5 elements. The world twisted and distorted, and a grand streak of light tore through the air, arriving before Li Qingshan at almost the same time. A second time, Li Qingshan gazed at the sky before lowering his head again and blinking. Final radiance of the setting sun, a still surface of water unfurled, reflecting the mountains and earth. Chu Lai King's eyes narrowed. The reversal of the 5 elements enveloped him in reverse, and the grand streak of light shot back. With a flash, the palace master slashed down viciously on Great Buddha Mountain, leaving behind a slash that was over 300 meters long. What kind of ability is this? Chu Lai King shattered the upside-down world with a single palm strike, but Li Qingshan had already disappeared. A streak of red light brushed past his shoulder, slanting and turning into an arc of light. It swept toward the 2 grandmasters of the School of Music and the School of Famous Masters and warned loudly, "Fellow Taoists, be careful!" Both of them turned pale, with fright. The great master of the School of Music hurriedly plucked the strings. Before the first note of the zither could be heard, a strong gust of wind blew and a pair of scarlet eyes appeared in front of him. Li Qingshan snatched the green jade pipa and smashed it on the ground. Freeze! The martial grandmaster's eyes widened as he roared. He pushed his cultivation to the limit and executed the body-locking incantation. However, before he could finish his words, he suddenly found himself unable to move. He saw his frightened face gradually distorting. The smooth surface of the mirror turned into ripples and dissipated. That's awful. Unpleasant to hear. Horrible. Li Qingshan said 3 times in a row and smashed the green jade pipa 3 times. With the first strike, the zither strings were all broken and the head was crushed. With the second strike, his lute cracked and his body was half destroyed. With the third strike, the pipa shattered. The nascent soul flew away. Li Qingshan sucked in a huge breath and swallowed the nascent soul. The spirit turtle pressed down, not giving her the opportunity to blow up her nascent soul at all. He licked his lips. Delicious! The great master of the School of Music watched this unfold without moving at all. It was like a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. All he felt was a chill. He wanted to run as far away as possible. The thunderous cries of the people of Li rang out by his ears. Li Qingshan raised his head and looked over. Golden light enveloped him from above. The 4 words, King of Chu's seal, blanketed the surroundings. It was just as unstoppable and unavoidable as before. Rumble! Thousands of bolts of lightning danced about like raging dragons. The great master of Taoism bellowed out, "Die, wretched demon!" Myriad sword technique. The palace master formed a seal with his hand, and the heavens' reliance sword split into thousands, forming a sword formation that surrounded Li Qingshan. The sword formation closed in with a whistle and stabbed down together. No matter how powerful your abilities are, how many directions can you block? Once the golden seal falls, the outcome will still be the same. "Sir, I'll borrow your body." Li Qingshan casually grabbed with his right hand without even looking back. As soon as the great master of Taoism broke free from the freezing curse, she felt her body being sucked over against her will. Frightened, she struggled desperately to break free. "Eat my blade." Li Qingshan raised the great master of Taoism and used the night battle's blade concealment form of the 8 directions. Over half of the thousands of bolts of lightning and blades landed on the blade. In just a single moment, the great master of Taoism's body was riddled with holes, almost reduced to dust. She wanted to escape with her nascent soul, but it was sucked firmly into Li Qingshan's right hand. Seeing that there was no way out, she roared out furiously, "I want to die with you." Halfway through her sentence, she discovered that she was rapidly rising up. "Lend me your nascent soul again." Li Qingshan flicked his right hand gently, and the gravitational force suddenly turned into a repulsive force. The nascent soul immediately rose into the air, and the great master of Taoism's shocked and furious face dissolved. Cracks appeared on it, and it shot out with streaks of light. It collided head-on with the King of Chu's golden seal. Boom! The nascent soul exploded, and violent energy whistled through the surroundings, sweeping away all of the lightning swords like it was nothing. The golden seal's descent came to a sudden halt, and it was instead lifted by several dozen meters, losing a layer of golden light. Li Qingshan shielded his eyes with his hand and glanced at it. He clapped his hands. "It's good." "Li Qingshan," the palace master called out sternly. Li Qingshan looked back, and anger flashed through his eyes. One with the sword, the palace master swung his heavenly sword, and an extremely resplendent streak of light suddenly shot out from the top of Great Buddha Mountain. "You're looking to die." Li Qingshan flapped his wings and turned into a scarlet streak of light to receive the streak of light. The palace master rejoiced inside. As long as he could keep him under the golden seal for a while, he would still be able to kill him. The moment the 2 streaks of light were about to collide, Li Qingshan moved several meters away, brushing past the palace master. He tilted his head and sneered, "Idiot!" With a boom, Li Qingshan landed on Great Buddha Mountain again and made his way towards the great master of miscellany. Again, "Stop him, sir." The great master of miscellany cried out in surprise. He flew off without any hesitation at all. Obtaining a treasured blade was already a great deal. He did not want to throw his life away at a time like this. Li Qingshan stopped and looked back. All he saw was a flash of cold light, and a spear stabbed towards him. The tip of the spear trembled and shone with specks of cold light. It was like a sky full of stars, enveloping his surroundings. It was like a black dragon rising from the ground, piercing and destroying everything. Li Qingshan did not dodge. He did not even look at the tip of the spear. Instead, he stared at the spear-wielding Yu Wuyang indifferently. "Black Cloud Sand Prison." Jin Fugue bellowed out furiously. Black sand blanketed the surroundings, enveloping both Li Qingshan and Yu Wuyang. Within the whistling sand, the tip of the spear stopped before the scarlet eye. It only needed to advance another 3 inches, and it would pierce through Li Qingshan's right eye. Li Qingshan did not move at all. He did not use any abilities to block it either. It was as if he had stopped the tip of the spear with his gaze. "Why didn't you block it?" Yu Wuyang asked. Why didn't you stab me? Li Qingshan smiled. Yu Weiyang was speechless. He did not stab the spear, not only because Li Qingshan did not dodge, but also because of Han Qiongji. There was a voice in his mind that repeatedly warned him, I will die, I will die, I will die. He was not afraid of death, but he did not want to die in vain. I don't want Qiongji to be sad. Li Qingshan turned around and walked away without looking at Yu Weiyang. The tip of the spear trembled a little. Yu Weiyang maintained the posture of stabbing the spear. After a while, he suddenly let out a long sigh and put away the spear. He cupped his hands towards the sky and said, Your Majesty, King Chu, please forgive me for not being able to participate in this battle. As Li Qingshan walked through the black sand, he felt the piercing pain that penetrated deep into his soul again. Suddenly, he raised his hand and waved it twice, like an adult chasing away an annoying child. Piss off! The black sand suddenly receded and swept back into Jin Fugui's hand. He rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly. I'm still your superior after all. Seeing Li Qingshan raise an eyebrow, he could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. He said to Chu Lai King in the sky, Your Majesty, there's something very suspicious here. The Hawkwolf Guard needs to investigate it carefully. Are the two of you still human? Chu Lai King flew into a rage. He was not insulting them, but questioning their position. The blossoming blade soul appeared,
Yu Weiyang
killing the
his eyes
Grandmaster
and
of the
said
School
nothing,
of Miscellany
but
in a
Jin
single
Fugui
stroke.
smiled.
You're tuning
I'm
into
the Golden
Mystic
Hawk
Fist
Commander of
YouTube
Great
channel.
Xia.
Don't forget
Even
to
if you're the
subscribe
ruler of
and
a
join us
province
on this
and
journey to
possess
catch
great
the most
prestige,
captivating
you
stories.
have
no right to send the two of us to our deaths. Not to mention, we have to die for something so ridiculous. All right. Chu Lai King was utterly furious. With a turn of his body, the encirclement around Li Qingshan had already collapsed. He stared at the figure with drifting, scarlet hair. It was just a single rebirth, yet the power he could unleash was not even as great as right now. He had even lost his weapon, but the feeling he gave off was completely different. It was like he had replaced him, the King of Chu, and everything was under his control. At this moment, the Grand Master of the School of Miscellany had already fled far away. Li Qingshan stood on the edge of the cliff and bellowed out, Why don't you hurry up and get your ass over here? His voice rumbled like thunder, but it did not contain any abilities. Kid, I thought you were dead, stupid. With a flash of his blade, he cut through the treasure bowl